Hey, this is Jason J. Lewis, Superman from Justice League Action, and you're watching SuperWonder Legacy.
You're strong.
I know.
Are you a sight for sore eyes?
It's nice to have someone who likes you for being you.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I am here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are comparing Superman and Wonder Woman to our boy Silver Surfer Norrin Radd and Shalla-Bal and Dawn Greenwood. And we'll be discussing at the end a little Wonder Woman issue that came out, not written by Tom King, that actually is, it's decent for what it is and for what Stephanie Williams was given. So it's like, that's why, spoiler alert, I'm much more forgiving than this lady is.
I mean, E for effort, you know, as I said.
It's like,
it's
still like a turd status quo, but still.
She may do what, you know, she had. Make lemonade out of very sour lemons, you know, but exactly. It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. So let's start with this. So here's a funny thing. Do you know how Silver Surfer was created at Marvel?
No, I do not.
All right, so here's the story. So Marvel has this way of doing comics, or as they used to call Marvel style, and it was created because Stan Lee was writing so many comics, he didn't have time to do like everything. So what he would do is write like loose script, like this happens, and then they fight. Describe the fight. So the artist would like describe the fight and stuff. So this is when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were doing a story, the first coming of Galactus. And so Kirby was doing all the art stuff. And then what had happened was he turns in his art and Stan goes, who's the Silver Surfer? Who's the surfer guy? And then Jack goes, well, I figured if Galactus is this planet destroyer, he should have like a herald or something like that. And, you know, surfing's cool nowadays. So I figured, we might as well put him on a surfboard.
You know, that is the most simplistic in a good way of a childish, you know, way of making up a character.
Yeah, and that's what Marvel does. It's like back in the day when they were going for that, because again, this was still at the time when comics were considered for kids and kids entertainment. So there is that. But it's like the other cool part about that way. Now you'd never get away with doing Marvel style nowadays because that's seen as like putting too much work on the artist. But it's actually kind of cool to see that like that happen. Just whole cloth. It's like, oh, the Silver Surfer. All right. So we have the Silver Surfer and Shalla-Bal, both of which have been Silver Surfers, and Dawn Greenwood, who is so part of the reason why we're doing this episode is because Robert had requested that, because we were both on his 5-year anniversary stream, and he had talked about like the book with Dawn Greenwood. So he told us to do it. And we're like, nah. So Britt, tell us about Silver Surfer and his interests.
Okay, so first of all, I didn't even know that Silver Surfer had love interests.
No, really?
Yeah, so this is very, very new to me. But of course Marvel does have their write-ups and stuff, so it's, you know, copy and paste whatever with their stuff. But so with this, you also are introduced with Shala from the movie. So that's really what I thought. Like, not that Silver Surfer like turned into a woman, but it's just the fact of, okay, it's two different characters. But I did not know she was the love interest of the original, Silver Surfer. But with comparing this to Superman and Wonder Woman, with the two interests, which is kind of interesting. With I guess how you say his name is Norrin,
Norn, yeah.
Norrin and Shala. They have the more tragic love, you know. Um, and that is one aspect that Clark and Diana have in the tragedy of pretty much editorial. And then you have Norrin and Dawn, which is more of when Clark and Diana are able to flourish, basically. So
Exactly.
to have these two pairings is kind of like, oh, you can have Clark and Diana in the same boat as either one of them. So
Like superheroes can have multiple love interests.
they can, but will editorial allow? Which
Yeah, I
is
know.
basically what we're going over with this. So it's
Yeah.
not so much as which one is better, you know, it's more so like we just said, which one will be allowed. And also it's like how the character grows, are you allowing the character and the dynamic to naturally um end, or is it going to grow more? You know, how is it going to go? But as we know, the Superman and Wonder Woman are not able to do either one. They aren't able to end naturally, and they also aren't able to flourish.
Exactly. Now, Britt and I are going to talk about two characters that are probably the biggest D to Z listers ever that we've definitely never talked about. So, Britt, tell us about these new characters I've never heard of named Superman and Wonder Woman. I have to do this every time. It never stops being funny.
Right. So the origin and development of this pairing, of course, they've had these occasional, hints and teases throughout the pre-crisis and post-crisis, and that was, of course, editorially stopped within post-crisis. Um, George Perez, he wanted to not only kind of redo the mess that John Byrne did with Action Comics 600, but he also had a story, um, a side story. Whether it was canon or not, he said that you can take it either way, but he wanted them to basically have one night together. And it was going to be the perspective of the gods. Um, and obviously, we did not have that story, and DC basically just torpedoed their relationship from there with post crisis. They were best friends, you know, until they tried to force the whole Trinity concept, which I can't stand.
So,
Um,
so you're telling me that all the best creatives of Superman and Wonder Woman end up supporting Super Wonder? It's kind of funny how that ends up, huh?
right, right. So we get years later, New 52, you have again this restart, and where the potential, of course, of the heroes being younger, and they are able to restart these dynamics and these relationships, and you have Superman and Wonder Woman. Um, but of course, DC did not let it, you know, we saw the potential of them together. And of course, the book was very successful with Charles Soule, and it sold. You have the merch, you have the advertising, and all of that. But then, of course, you change creative teams. That creative team just sucked all the life out of the book and made it very mean spirited and antagonistic. And you kill off, you know, that Superman. You have Diana being in a mental institute in a straitjacket, and yeah, you
Yeah,
have
because
a
that's
screwed up.
better than having her be with Superman.
Right. So you have them all just whacked out or whatever, and your continuity is screwed up to the high heavens. Whatever. Um, So yeah, we have this tragedy of editorial again, and again, we saw the potential, with New 52, but then it was basically, you know, um, taken from us, like basically like an Indian giver, you know.
It's basically like, okay, so imagine it this way. Imagine you have something that you really like and you're in the middle of consuming, like, let's say it's a pizza. And then DC's like, and then the person making the pizza is like, no, we don't like that pizza.
Exactly. It's like that's a really good cheesy pizza, like the best ever, and you're just gonna take it away from me and say it's bad. What?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like and even it's like when they say what annoys me is when the marketing people say you shouldn't want this, and I'm like, okay, I get it, but here's the problem with that: if your audience is showing you something they want, and and even if it's something that you personally as a creative don't like, I'm sorry, eventually you have to say, okay, you know what? This is what the fan base wants. They pay the bills. Ultimately, you have to, because ultimately here's the thing. You're not doing creator owned comics when you write for DC and Marvel. You're writing corporate owned characters. And okay, Britt, what's the number one priority of any corporation?
To get money.
Exactly. And you know what's kind of funny? It's amazing how many cases, statues, T-shirts are Superman and Wonder Woman. So for a ship that DC seemingly hates, they seem to do a lot of homaging it.
Exactly. And especially because you can't market Steve. Like, it,
Generic Army Man number 2,
exactly.
and Lois, generic Sunday school teacher.
No, she's not a Sunday school teacher now.
Okay. She's a generic middle school teacher number 2. Like, I'm sorry, a purple shirt and like pants and like a jacket is not it's not a costume.
Exactly. Or some tacky full dress, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's not that. And see, I get it, but at least give, and by the way, her being Superwoman, at least give her a unique costume besides just copying the Injustice Laura Kent costume. 'Cause that's what that is.
that, but also, I mean, you can definitely tell that the general audience couldn't tell the difference because they thought that she was the cousin or something.
And I love again when they said, "Oh, there's a new Superwoman. We'll be revealing who that is, who that is as the story goes by." The next day, it's Lois.
And then, but also in that time, in that span of time, they were saying, "Oh, this is a future daughter," and then the next day you are sexualizing her because she's Lois. Like,
And I'm like,
yeah, you can definitely tell the priorities of some of the Superman fans.
yeah,
But
exactly.
um but yeah, so you have this pairing that obviously has the marketing ability and DC just doesn't want it. And back to what you were saying though, that with Lois and Steve, there's a difference. You know what? King is the prime example. He obviously loves Steve to have this self-insert. And but
His own words, by the way.
But at the same time, obviously you are getting backlash from the fans, and the sales are pretty much showing it.
And here's the
That's,
thing, King. I think King knows he's getting backlash for it. That's why so many people are mentioning the Steve stuff.
I mean, yeah, and even he himself is mentioning it and double down on it. But it's kind of like if you know that this is getting backlash, but also it's not getting backlash and it's selling. It's getting backlash and losing sales. That was the difference between Clark and Diana's relationship. You had people protesting the relationship, traditional fans or whatever, Chloe's fans.
But
But
small amount, and the book sold like gangbusters.
yes, but then you have those same Chloe's fans who, you know, who was fussing and stuff. they had books with the convergence, and the beginning of rebirth, and the sales did not match what Superman and Wonder Woman had, and even the Rebirth Trinity book did not match the sales that Superman and Wonder Woman had, and Super Sons, the first book of that, did not match the sales. So
And
all
then
of
every
that,
time they relaunched it, it like, pfft. But that's the thing. It would be one thing again. Britt and I've said this many times. It'd be one thing if like the Super Wonder book flopped and the other book sold really well. It would still be more like, look, we like it, but we get if like the overall fan base hated it. The opposite is true at this point.
right? And then of course, you have the power couple narrative, too godlike, and we emphasize godlike because they aren't gods, which is in black and white on the, in the issue. They aren't gods, they aren't mortal, but they are as powerful as gods, and they are mortal human, in a sense, because the way Clark was raised, but also screw that nonsense about like Krypton being desolate and, cold and empty. That is the beauty of the elves, and what they represented for Krypton is that they were supposed to do the opposite. They were supposed to be the ones that stand out and fighting against the traditional norms. Laura having a natural birth. That was the beauty of, their connection to Cal, not just his parents, but as characters themselves. And then you have the idea of being a power couple. When you say that, that doesn't mean just physical power. It means as an individual, you are independent, you are successful doing your own thing, and then you come together with with a partner who is equal to you emotionally and intellectually, and you both bring something new and something positive. That is what a power couple is. The fact that when you associate power couple, or when some detractors associate power couple with Superman and Wonder Woman and make it into a negative sense, talking about eugenics and stuff, but then they turn around and call their preferred couple as a power couple, is kind of like, okay, what's the difference?
Yeah, exactly. So we also get to like the whole thing about continuity, and the thing about it is like is like the other thing that's interesting is when Scott Snyder was talking about events, and he says we're not going to do an event unless the universe is better off at the end of the event. Arguably, Rebirth was the opposite of that. Now, hindsight is 2020, obviously, but it's like when you're looking at it, it's like I get what it looked like. It was going to be like a big like revitalization, but when you look at it now, it's like, guys, trying to combine two incompatible universes never works.
It wasn't a revitalized anything. It was basically a nostalgic trip for middle-aged man children. That's what it was. You know, and that is basically what it was advertised as, really, when you read between the lines, because um I think it was Jeff Johns that said, he was going back to his childhood and things like that. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's basically what Convergence was too. But that is not what's in the now. And I think some fans are very much like cheap, and
Mhm.
they follow the trend, they follow, what's popular. They hate on what is said to be hated on, even if it you know, um, isn't a problem. They will still hate on it. Like how it is with Superman and Wonder Woman. Um, And that was the biggest problem with Rebirth. And now so many people, we see on Twitter saying how Rebirth is actually bad, especially for Wonder Woman. They are seeing how it has affected her books, long term. Even Superman as well. And a lot of the Superman fans don't even like John anymore. They thought that, oh, having John, it not only solidified Chloe, as in every other love interest, the doors closed, and that's what Dan Jurgens
Even though
wanted.
you kind of can't say that because Bruce has Damien with Talia, and yet he's with Selena.
Exactly. So, but now look at John. He does not have any type of interesting character arc on his own. He has to be with Damien. He has to be Clark Kent 2.0. He doesn't have anything on his own. Even with what they're trying to do now with the reign of the Superboys and trying to basically bait young John fans. That kind of thing is like, okay, you're doing exactly what you call Super Wonder as a gimmick. You were doing exactly that with John.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, the thing about John, once you age him up, well, he's even more redundant because who else do you have, Britt, that's like a Superboy character that's already pre-existing since the 90s?
Connor.
Exactly.
Who is a better character too?
Way better character. And I'm like, guys, it's like, what do you, if you want to give Superman like more of a relationship with Connor, that's one thing, but give him a kid and it's pretty much that entire relationship. And I'm like, okay. But anyway, speaking of relationships, let's talk about Silver Surfer and Shalla-Bal.
Okay. So this pairing, Shalla-Bal is the classic love interest for Silver Surfer, which again, I did not know that. It was dated back to his 1968 debut from Stan Lee. She is his homespun lover from the utopian world Zenla. Zenla. And as you said, with his origin, he was Galactica's herald and trying to save their world, basically. So it was a sacrifice and a tragic love story.
It was the idea that he said that Galactus was gonna like destroy his world. He goes, "Hey, I'll serve as your herald if you spare my world."
Right. So with this, again, the themes and everything, it is a tragic love story. They are separated by cosmic duty, manipulation from Galacticus. They really don't have a like long term, love story. I would say that she would be, to compare her to another love interest, honestly, I would say either Lana or Lori.
That would be interesting. You mean she's kind of like the one that he was with at first, and then he goes off and does some adventure, and then they kind of grow apart, kind of.
Yeah, just like circumstances, with Lana, that was his childhood, first love type thing. So you grow apart. With Lori, it was the circumstances that she was a mermaid. So
Yeah,
she
I was about
had
to say.
to, he lives on land and in space, and she, lives in Atlantis. So it's more of a circumstantial type tragedy for them.
Yeah, exactly. So what? So the other thing that it's like, and it's interesting, and it's like I always like these love interests when it's like, oh, they want to be together, but circumstances keep them out. But it's like the problem is too many writers will use that as a petty reason to like, screw you fans. I'm not just talking about Super Wonder. It's like even like Marvel did this with Spider-Man and like other love interests, and that particularly Marvel does. Like some editors at Marvel will do this. DC is okay, Britt. I'm gonna give you a little tough love. like as petty as DC editorial can be, Marvel is 80 times more petty.
Honestly, yeah, they are. Because I think what Marvel does, they see their characters as they really want to emphasize them being flawed and relationship drama, basically like it's a teen drama. Um, and they don't want to have couples settle down. With DC, their characters is like they, again, these whole godlike beings, they want them to be more conservative and conform to, what they perceive as human aspects, which is like the perfect conservative, you know, a relationship, a family, and things like that. But then also DC really caves a lot to the fan base, and 9 times out of 10, it's not a good thing, because it's more so you're trying to chase what you think is popular, but the results show differently.
Yeah, and now here's the thing. You do want to pay attention to I understand Marvel's reticence at first because you don't want your fans to be the ones that purely dictate your status quo, because you won't be able to do anything new with it sometimes. But the problem is, at least don't be petty about it. That's my thing. Look, if you want, let me put it this way. If you just didn't want to pursue SuperWonder anymore, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't be as bent out of shape about it if at least the people working there at the time weren't so like petty about it. That was my issue, when they're like, oh, screw you, or like this is fanboy porn or something like that. And I'm like, guys, come on.
Exactly. That is pretty much why it is such a fight to, have the pairing at least gain some type of respect.
Yeah, exactly. Because you then have too many other writers that people listen to making all of these like really weird like accusations about SuperWonder. So I'm like, oh, okay, fine. But anyway, back to this. And you also have, Shalla-Bal is, because at one point Shalla-Bal became a herald. So Galactus has many other heralds. So Britt, we have talked about another herald of Galactus on the show. You know which one?
No.
The God of Thunder.
Who?
Thor.
Oh.
He was in Donny Cates' run, and it was dope. That's the one where he has the suit that looks like the Donna Troy suit with all the stars on it.
No.
Yeah, but that's what that kind of is. But it's like, so there have been like multiple Heralds of Galactus, and that's like Shalla-Bal being the surfer, and she was also the one in the movie, obviously. So that's kind of who it is, and they went with that one because even in the Fox Fantastic Four movies, like they came out many years ago. I know I'm dating myself, but screw it. They used Norrin in that one, voiced by Lawrence Fishburne. Fantastic thing. But it's like, the thing is, the part of the fan, it's like you do have the fan base that's like, look, the first MCU appearance of Silver Surfer, and you're using the derivative version of him. Why couldn't you just use like Norrin Radd for the first appearance of the Silver Surfer? And to a point, I kind of get what they're going for, especially when this was in a period where the Marvel movies were trying to replace all of their main characters and no one was accepting it. Like, Britt, I've explained many times, all new, all different, and the travesty that was. But if you use it in terms that you will understand, that was Marvel's DC Rebirth.
Terrible.
Except worse. I would say worse. Because it was like, if you wanted the Hulk, you had to read that. They didn't give you an alternative. It's not like now where we have Tom King's flawed Wonder Woman, and that's an understatement. And then you have like absolute Wonder Woman, which was way better. It's not like you have alternatives. No, you just have one. So it's like that's the thing about Marvel. They will take away choice because they know that their fan base is like as known derivatively as the Marvel zombies because they'll buy Marvel books no matter if they're good or bad.
Well, that is true.
Yeah, so it's like that's the point. Now, Britt, let me ask you, where do you stand on like the whole introducing Silver Surfer by using the female version for the MCU version, even though the one that people most know about would be Norrin?
Honestly, I would have introduced the OG first. Um, because I really don't see the difference of like why did you choose Shala? Like why?
Yeah,
It's
you know it's kind of funny. They gave Shala Norrin's origin.
okay, so you're just trying to be different or something like that. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm like they literally gave him Norrin's origin. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, in that case, then I'm on the side of use the OG. If you have to like change origins and or whatever, it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. But you and everyone in the comments, where do you stand on which Silver Surfer to use? Because it's fine using Shala, but particularly if it's the first time a Silver Surfer has been in the movie since like the early 2000s. Please use the other one. So then we get Dawn Greenwood. Now this is one that I didn't. Not only does Silver Surfer have a love interest, he's got two. I'm like, what? As soon as I was on that Robert show with you, and as soon as he brings up this character, I'm like, who the hell is she?
She is she is pretty new. She's from 20 uh 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she's just I would say 11, 12 year old 12 year yeah character. And she was created by Dan Slott and Mike Allred, which honestly that was a good run, that Robert introduced us to.
It's fun.
Unlike, Shala, her relationship with Norrin is basically a chance to have adventures, but also it's more emotional and it's for him to grow. I did not like of course, the whole thing about like um the humanity stuff. Like,
Yeah,
please stop.
he's more human, he's more grounded because he's with a human. I'm like, oh god damn it.
Yeah, that is the thing that's kind of like, please stop doing it. Please, please, please stop doing it.
That's a trope that
Because
really has to go away, Britt.
it really does, because your humanity or you being quote unquote human or whatever does not boil down to who you are romancing. You like, so that means if you are not human, you can be what? Um, I'm just exaggerating, but you're going to be 50 years old. And so, of your 50 years of life, you are not human until you meet a romantic interest.
Yeah, I know. And like that is very dangerous in terms of like the like terminology. But regardless, at the very least, at least Dawn is a good love interest and a good person, unlike Lois. So there is that.
Yeah, she was not too much of a codependent type character. Neither one of them are. They're still very independent and very, it's very much on equal ground when it comes to the emotion and the intellect. She didn't need to be, saved, and it didn't go into the Captain Save a Thought type trope either.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is like when she goes on adventures with him, I didn't feel like I do with like Lois shows up with Clark in the middle of a battle, and I'm like, oh god, here we go. No, with this one, it was more like, oh look, she's there.
Right. It did not feel annoying. Like, um, in a sense, what Dan Jurgens, how he would write Lois to be, important, or how Philip J. Philip Johnson Kennedy had to write, with War World, when you have Lois fans saying, "Oh, she should be in War World with him," and you made the suit instead of what it was as to honor the slaves, and who died. You
Can I
turned it
just
into a
say,
sex joke.
as someone that thinks the Warworld saga is one of the best Superman stories of all time, I'm just gonna bring this up. What's Lois gonna do on Warworld?
You know what? I have no
Particularly in
idea.
that, you know what I think it is? They wanted him, so Clark gets the gladiator suit. They wanted Lois to be in like the Princess Leia, like episode 6 bikini outfit.
Probably.
That I can, because with the amount of people that were like practically drooling over the PKJ joke about the Warworld suit, I'm like, yeah, I see where your guys' priorities are.
Right.
But it's like, who knows at that point? But at least with this, because the other thing that really helps is that I really like Norrin as a character. He does a lot of really dope stuff. Like, because here's a cool story. So in Donny Cates's Venom, we may have to do a comparison with Venom because he's actually a really cool character. But they did this story where Null, the god of the symbiotes, invades and he takes over the darkness. The point is, at the end battle, Null summons Mjolnir and the Silver Surfer's board, which can transform into a sword, by the way, and combines them into a giant axe and beats the crap out of Null. It's so metal.
Don't let Snyder hear that, because he will definitely have Batman do that.
But no, he'll have the Batman who laughs do that.
The Batman who cackles.
The Batman who cackles. My gosh. All right. So similarities and differences. Well, obviously, Shalla-Bal and Norrin ain't Kryptonian and Amazon.
Well, that is one difference, yes. But with that, they are godlike protagonists, grappling with love. Clark, Diana, and Norrin, they all exist on near mythic or cosmic level, making intimacy difficult, which we saw in New 52, but we also saw it in Tomorrowverse and Kingdom Come, which those two verses is definitely important for the end
I saw
of
that.
this. So it's love shaped by responsibility. Each relationship is influenced by duty, sacrificing over making sacrifices over personal desire, which again we saw with New 52, I would say, because even though they were together, they still would put the world first before their relationship. Also, you had the whole smothered desire thing. That was the one thing that Tamaki sort of did right in a way, very twisted way. But he still gets a -10 out of me. Um, to show that, Diana does desire that family, the marriage, the kids, or whatever with Clark is just still duty first. And then post crisis as well. Diana, she wanted that different life. She dreamed of having a relationship with Clark and everything, but that was taken away from her as well. So,
It's almost like something comes first. I wonder what that word could
right,
be.
the world, everyone,
Bingo.
even if it is very selfish of the world to be so demanding of them, they still selfishly, you know, put everyone else's needs first.
Exactly.
So you have this romance as the lens of humanity. Honestly, Clark and Diana's relationship is far more quote unquote human than their relationship with Lois and Steve. Because what Lois and Steve emphasize is Clark and Diana being these godlike beings, and how those two need to be propped up to have these two godlike beings leashed or tamed or whatever. They don't treat them as just regular people. Even when have Lois call him Smallville or the way she treats him, it's more of a humbling tactic, not in a positive way, but very much in a negative way. He
Yeah,
does not
what
need
people
that.
forget is Honey is saying Smallville. That was from like her calling him a hick, pretty much.
Exactly. Is exactly derogatory. Um, I mean, that's basically if you call, you know, words, if you use those types of words to call someone, um, it's not cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Secondly, with Steve, he and we've talked about this, him being this macho, um, very bland and boring army guy, but he is a total contradiction to Diana's mission. First with him being a military guy, whatever, just in the army, associated with the government, and the fact that he continues to be associated with the government and the military and everything with how corrupt it is. And he chooses the military over Diana. And the thing is, Diana glorifies it to prop up Steve. So, and especially with King's story, that Diana cared nothing of her sisters, that the same exact institute, Steve is associated with, that we see him drawn in the army uniform, you
Marine
know,
Corps, but
well,
same
whatever.
thing. Go on.
I mean, they switch up his
They change his branch so much. I'm like, what is
exactly.
going on with
So
this man's service?
whatever.
But here's the thing. Yeah, I've seen it said on the internet by King fans that were trying to defend it. Like, okay, oh, he was trying to work from within stuff. And I'm like, okay, that could be true. You need to show it. That's a fundamental flaw with King's writing in this run. From an editorial perspective, I were King's editor. One of the things that I would advise him at least is to say, look, man, I get that you want to have all these cool like explanations for stuff. You need to show it. Or if you can't make room, don't do it. Because it's like you could say one thing, but if the story doesn't show it, it's just you saying it, and that holds less weight than it actually being on the page.
Exactly.
That's the fundamental flaw with actually a lot of writers. It's not just King, although he is one of the ones that obviously, since Britt and I cover Wonder Woman so much, that's the one that we most see. Is like a lot of them. I get that, like maybe they have like such an epic story and they think that like they don't have the space to be able to fit in all the stuff, but it's like that's the job of the writer to think, okay, so if I want to have these statements, like there are plenty of times when Britt and I write stuff and then we'll have these fantastic ideas and we'll go, okay, that's great. We want to do this, but we also have to explain it or at least justify it in the story. So it's not like if we're ever interviewed about this, we're like, oh, it's this. Where is that in the book? Oh, it's not in the book. It's in my head.
Right.
That's just being a good writer. So it's like, particularly in a visual medium, show us. You can show us. But who knows at this point, Britt? Who knows at this point? But yeah, so let's go to the key differences between the pairings. Besides the fact that Norrin's not a Kryptonian.
Okay, so power of equals, Clark and Diana, they are very much, the foundation is being equals. For Shalla and Dawn, really, it's not about too much of the equality. They are, written as the love interest. So they can be put in the background, from time to time. But Diana, she demands to be right there side by side with Cal. So that goes into the active partnership. They have to be, um, like I said, side by side. And that was one thing that really DC's problem with, SuperWonder is because there's the demand that they are supposed to be equals. We saw even with Lois being Superwoman, she was still very much a sidekick. She wasn't a true equal to um Clark having the powers. And we really didn't see her do much. She did the same exact thing that Clark would do on an everyday. She, it was written as far too easy. And also for them to be married with a kid and to say, oh, she finally understands him now with having the powers,
Mhm.
that really says a lot about the instability of the relationship.
Well, it's like I love when that happened, and people's like, "Here's the good news that the giving Lois powers actually did. It exposed the two-facedness of some fans, where they're like, "Oh, we hate Clark with a suit with a powered person because we think it drifts him close away from humanity," and it's like, "Oh, Lois really understands." Clark more than Diane because she's human. Oh, she can really understand him now that she has powers. Hello.
Exactly. It was really, really confusing on, the mindset of the fans and how they talk about, you know, these pairings and have such hypocrisy and double standards. Um, then with going with the tension surrounding these couples, of course you have the truth versus the hope. With that is Diana, she wants to see the truth. You know, Cal, he is truthful, but at the same time, he does live in the way of lies of omission. And that was also the one thing why Tomasi gets a -10 because, or -1,000, because he wanted to project that lies of omission to Diana, but Clark has lived his whole life like that.
Yeah,
So,
that's pretty much his thing.
yeah. So, like trying to create a conflict with them, it just made them both like so antagonistic towards each other, which was uncharacteristic. And also just having that, you know, honestly, Cal at that time was very unlikable. And you can just tell they tried to force a breakup. Then you have diplomacy and versus restraint with Clark and Diana. Again, Diana, she is truthful, she is diplomatic, but and Cal, he's more reserved. He's more, you know, he he's active, but at the same time, he's very reactive at the same time. You know, it really depends on the certain situation. And we saw this in Wonder Woman 800 how he is conflicted on does Superman do everything for everyone or does he hold back? What should he do? And that was the one thing of why Diana, in a lot of stories, she becomes his moral compass and also his conscience. When he is going through those types of dilemmas, she is the one that understands that to help him through it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then it's like you also have it where like, but it's like it is really funny, Britt. I say this every time. Every time we do a couples comparison, it's really hilarious how the most iconic couples in comics are the powered couples.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, the only couples that have the civilian love interest, you can say Silver Surfer, yeah, with Dawn. Um, Wally, you know, Flash, Wally. Um, Diana, I mean, if you force Steve, I guess. And then, but the main one is Clark with Lois. And with that, I mean, they're trying to give Lois powers. So,
I
yeah,
should tell you something. Instead of turning to Timu Super Wonder, just bring back Super Wonder.
exactly.
But that's what it is. But it's like all of this. It's like at least with Shala, it's like you have that tragedy like link when it comes to them, and in many ways, If you really look at it, that's very similar to Tomorrowverse Super Wonder, because spoiler alert for Crisis, Wonder Woman sacrifices her life at the end of that movie. So it's like you still have, so that's a tragic romance. That's the only time that you could say that that relationship is I hesitate to say doomed, but Britt, you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really their tragedy is not by design. It's not like that is the story that's supposed to be told. It is editorial, forced um, to do so for another, status quo. Um, it's just not. It's not within the narrative at all. It can go as long as you have the writers invested in it and being able to maintain the momentum of creativity.
Yeah, exactly. And those of you in the chat, let us know which couple you prefer, Shalla-Bal or Dawn Greenwood. So on to Dawn Greenwood.
With them,
Also, real quick, isn't it kind of interesting how many non-powered couples, and it was powered to non-powered, are better than Clark and Lois?
because again, they don't go within the whole Captain Save a Thought codependency that if you're not with me, then you're going to turn into a tyrant or a dictator, or um, you have this fake girl boss facade.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's nothing like that.
Yeah, exactly. So Dawn Greenwood.
So obviously she is unequal in power, physical power, because she is just a regular, mortal. But she is equal on emotional footing. The relationship is from shared experience, and it's basically the adventure, the conversation, the curiosity, and the trust that they have within each other. And also, it is more so of a it emphasizes on the romance part, the wonder and the emotional healing than tragedy. Um, they also have, of course, the relationship goes naturally, whether it ends or whether it continues, but it's not anything of sacrifice or anything like that.
By the way, Cameron says Britt never fails to make me laugh. Captain Save a Thought. I need that on a t-shirt. That's that, and like it's the silhouette of Lois. it's like you take a Superman and Lois panel, like silhouette it, and then just put Captain Save a Thought, the newest superhero.
Exactly. Yeah, you can definitely put that on the shirt. Yes.
That's got to be a Comics League t-shirt at some point. Oh my god. And on the back it says Lois Lame.
Oh my god.
That's going on. I need to make Comics League t-shirts this year. That's gonna be awesome. But yeah, but it's like with this, it's like the other funny cool thing with this is this also is kind of tragic when you have like the immortality thing, because he's him and she's her, but this is the other way to make immortality work well, because with Diana, obviously, that's the thing. I love that Kelly Thompson came out and said, Diana's 24 in Absolute Wonder Woman. She's not ancient. It doesn't work for the story. And I'm like, thank you.
I mean, when does making Diana old as dirt work?
DCEU?
No, it didn't work because she did not have her supporting cast. Also, you had like to fill in the blanks for why she sat basically on her ass for 100 years.
Okay, I'll give you that. But it's like the point is, it's a way to do the immortality thing. Like, again, you could do like I think Immortal Wonder Woman did the depiction, because it's like, look, you can have it where Diana's struggling with her immortality in the distant future, but don't make it now. She's millions now.
Yeah, Immortal Wonder Woman is the only time that works. Or Kingdom Come, something like that. Something in the distant future you can deal with the whole immortality thing. But having her thousands of years old in wartime, no.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't work. But it's also like it's like with this you also have like yes, you have the grounding of Norrin, but I think the way they do it here is Dawn never tries to make Norrin less than what he is. As opposed to, I've said many times, is like Lois, we either directly or indirectly causes Superman to drift away from being Kryptonian and more toward the human way. So it's like that's the difference in that's why grounding is okay here in this context because it has a different effect. And it's written admittedly well enough by Slott that it doesn't revert into Superman territory.
Exactly. That's exactly why it's acceptable. When you don't write the godlike character as a god, or emphasize, oh, if they don't um do this and that as a quote unquote human, then they don't have humanity. They are um two steps away from being a dictator or something like that. That's the whole thing that's lingering over Clark and Diana with Steve and Lois.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, here's the thing: you have to have the love interest be unique. Because I'm sorry, Steve and Lois are like generic love interest 2 and 3. That's what, especially Steve. Steve is generic sad sack. Speaking of sad sack, wait for our Green Lantern issue because I got words on that one. So it's like the other thing that I really liked about the book is the way that like she tries to understand Norrin. So it's like it's a little bit more of like, I'm not going to turn you into like me. I want to learn more about who you are as a person. And it's like there are some storylines like beginning of Warworld Saga where they try to make Lois Kryptonian, but I don't remember Lois learning Kryptonian. I remember certain Amazon learning Kryptonian. I wonder
Exactly.
who could that be? She was fighting someone named General Zod. I've never heard of a
Exactly.
Superman love interest, or in this case, a side character that happens to be in love with Superman. See, I don't use the love interest term with Diana, so none of you Wonder Woman fans come at me. It's like it's almost like just reading in a book is not enough. If you learn, it's like that's the thing. That's the difference. Lois just learned about stuff because she was writing a book about Krypton. So it's in a way for her own self-aggrandizement. Diana was learning it for Clark.
Right.
There's a big difference there. So and now, if that was PKJ's intention, who can say? But that's the way it came off of, at least to Britt and I.
It did. It definitely was. Lois was just writing a book for herself, I think. And of course, it was PKJ's whole thing about, you know, this. He had these characters having journals, kind of like how John Stewart had war journals and stuff. So he has this whole journal thing that he wanted to do, and and create like the Book of L. Well, that's what it was. It was the Book of L and the history of Superman's life, of the the history of Krypton and the L's and everything like that. But I mean, he really only had her mention that book like once, and then it was nothing afterwards. I think it was just to make it seem like Lois is a part of the family, of of everything, but she really isn't. You know, with Diana being so cultured as she embraces um Cal for who he is, both sides of him. And yeah, she was the first to know the Kryptonian language. So that honestly would be Diana
Yeah,
than
exactly.
Lois.
Exactly. And it's more like it's also when you really think about it, Lois, you're married to a Kryptonian. That's kind of cheating.
I mean, if Diana was married to Cal, well, okay, so I wouldn't say that because whether she was married to him or not, she would still want to know of the Kryptonian culture.
Hence, she learned the language. She wasn't married to him. But I'm bringing up like, so you're writing a book about Krypton. Aren't you married to a Kryptonian? That's kind of cheating. But
Well, she's unethical and cheating all the time because she writes most of her work is writing about Superman.
exactly. So that I love that one backup where that one person was basically like, "Hey, how come you're allowed? How come you're saying Clark is like to invest in a story, but you wrote about Superman when you were dating him?"
Right. That hmm.
Something doesn't add up here. But anyway, so Britt, tell us which pairing for Norrin is the most similar to Super Wonder.
On at both of them are, but
Mhm.
is really Dawn, which I was surprised at, but
Yeah.
it is because of the emotional and intellectual connection. With Shala, it's more of a tragedy, and it is a natural into that. Um, and like I said, she's more of Lana or Lori.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you're right, Britt. That is interesting how the non-powered love interest is the most like Super Wonder. It's almost like Super Wonder has nothing to do with them being powered individuals.
I mean, that was pretty much the premise of Power Couple. It's like it has nothing to
Mhm.
do with their powers. It is always about their emotional bond. And that's pretty much what this was. Um, Also, you can say that it does go with Shala because of the tragedy of editorial and, manipulation and stuff like that. But again, the one that it really connects to on an intellectual level and emotional is Dawn.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But what do we know? We ship the eugenics couple. Oh my god. Anyway, part two: editorial writer and fan reception. I'm sure the editorial writer and fan reception of Super Wonder was definitely not the most toxic thing in the world.
Right, right, right.
I'm
Okay,
sure everyone was like singing "Kumbaya." Everyone was standing in a circle, dancing, holding hands.
sure, yeah. So editorial and writers, of course, you had to push for New 52. You also had to push really for post-crisis and with Perez, but as you had to push, you also had the throwaway from editorial. Really unprovoked. It's not like the relationship failed or anything like that. It was just editorial not um wanting to be, basically mandated or required to maintain momentum, maintain respect for Diana. That, like I said, she couldn't be in the background. But they barely can make team books work. That's not world's finest. Even Justice League is it's very disconnected. The relationships or whatever are non-existent. So when you don't have that investment with any other pairing, let alone a group of people, then yeah, it's not going to work or it's not going to last.
Mm-hmm.
Clark and Diana, even if we know that their relationship can last, you know that editorial is very lazy and they can't keep up with not only connecting their worlds together, but just having that, like, the respect, because one writer will want to have Diana in the background, kind of like how Lois, you can go, I would say, honestly, a whole storyline without Lois showing up, you know.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
But With Diana, no, that's not possible. So that really is the only thing with the editorial and writers, as we continue to say.
Well, yeah, and the other thing that's kind of interesting is like, again, I know that everyone that likely watches the show is going to know this, and I know Britt, you probably know this, but I might as well just say it. SuperWonder is not a thing. It's not a new 52 thing. This has literally existed since the golden age of comics. It's just SuperWonder was when it was actually formalized as a canon thing. Because it was always like, will they, won't they, or Elseworlds. Actually, practically every Elseworlds. That's the funniest part about it.
Exactly.
But it was like, it wasn't a new 52 invention. Some people that claim to be comic book like historians think it is, but it's not. Hey, what's up, Dream Laboon? There's so many new people, Britt, that show up at this channel now. It's fun.
Yay.
But anyway, but yeah, it's like, and that's why Britt and I, one of the earliest episodes we did is like the history, because it's like, look, if we're going to talk about this pairing, and honestly, it gets hard. I still can't believe that we've gotten over 128 episodes just talking about Superman and Wonder Woman. This is hilarious. But it's like you need to understand the in political science terms, the historical context around like something in order to understand like why we talk about this, why there's audience pay up. In fact, Britt, wasn't there like in the letters page of books like going back to like the 70s of people saying he should dump Lois and go with Diana?
That, and also even Steve, they called him a sack of potatoes. So
I'm sorry, I'm calling him the sad sack of potatoes. That's his new thing. That's the new thing. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. So then we get to the Silver Surfer Shalla-Bal. Can I take a wild guess and say the fan base is much more accepting of this than SuperWonder?
Of course.
I wonder how I predicted that.
Because it does fall into the traditional, love interest trope. But it's also, I mean, it's very much a relationship that has its end, so they can take it or leave it. I think also going back to SuperWonder is that it is unpredictable. You can have, say, Alan Moore say that, oh, SuperWonder, even though a lot of people take For the Man Who Has Everything like serious, it's not, because he didn't mean about the predictableness of SuperWonder. It wasn't taken as a bad thing. It is an obvious thing, and that really means that it's natural. But at the same time, right after For the Man Who Has Everything, he was going to have them paired in Twilight of the Superheroes. And I think we should actually, if we did not, we should go over that.
Actually, we have. I know we mentioned it a few times, but we've never gone over it. Okay, we're going to do that. The two things that we need to go over once are He-Man and Teela and Twilight of the Superheroes. Hell yeah, we will do those. Don't worry about that. So it's because it's like when you look at that, it's like, so that's what Watchmen almost was.
Watchmen and actually Kingdom Come was it that pretty much kicked off Kingdom Come.
I could see that. I could definitely see that. I like that. That's interesting. So then we have Silver Surfer and Dawn Greenwood, and that's what it's. This is also the part where I'm like, it's like it's kind of interesting how like even with Thor and Silver and Sif or Jane Foster or Scott and Emma and Jean. Yes, I have preferences, but it's like none of these guys or girls that have multiple love interests, I really hate their love interests. It's like, okay, I could see either one of these characters work. So it's not like there's a Lois in this relationship. Because even like when I saw the Dawn Greenwood relationship, I'm like, oh, okay, I could definitely see the value in this and the way it works from a story perspective of like, particularly when, again, Britt, it's like you wouldn't expect, to your point, a character like the Silver Surfer that's like the herald of a guy that eats planets to have a love interest. And it's like when you see this and I'm like, oh my gosh, this actually works. I don't know why this works, but I want it.
It all has to do with the writing.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you
It's like
know,
here's the thing: a good writer can make with. Okay, I'm gonna say something, but I wanna qualify this by saying within reason. A good writer can pair up any character and make it work within reason. Because don't listen to comics Twitter, Britain. I know this, but it's like
exactly.
you could put two characters that seem to be incompatible. Like, let me this way: a good writer could put Diane and Steve together, and I probably would not hate it. In fact, there are comic book storylines that I've gone over with Robert, or even I'll admit Clois was well done. I still don't like the pairing, obviously, but there are ways that you can write this, and it's like, okay, I could see why this pairing exists. The problem is that's much less with Steve Trevor, but that's because he's a sad sack of potatoes. Man, I love that. That has such a nice ring to it.
Oh my God, you have a
He's the
new.
moldy potatoes too. They bend in the hot sun for 5 hours.
Oh my goodness.
That's so good. I love it. Or and they yeah. So there's that. And but yeah, it's like it's one of those storylines where I'm like, okay, I could again, immortality done well, and non-powered to powered love interest done well. It's amazing, honestly.
Right.
So then we get to the Silver Surfer and Love, a character defined by distance. Because yeah, that's very. I could also see, honestly, Silver Surfer appealing to fans that have served in the armed forces, because being away from home, protecting your loved ones, and not being able to go back because you're either you're like millions of miles away in a conflict or something like that. So I can imagine like that, like distance from your loved ones really like hits the nail on the head for certain people.
Yeah, I mean it does resonate, you know, in the very unique way. And that is what these characters overall is supposed to be about. You know, being unique, being a little bit over the top, but they still have those connections that the reader can, well, connect with and resonate with. But trying to have them like actually as, you know, just regular people, that is not what fiction is supposed to be about.
No, exactly. But here's the thing: there's a difference between humanizing characters and making them relatable. Because the way comic book writers nowadays do human is that they have to ignore, like, Norrin has to ignore his Zenla heritage. But like I just mentioned, you can take a certain part of a character's origin without changing anything like that, and then if you really think about it, you can make these characters relatable without having to say, oh, he's just a human that has powers. Like with, again, he's from another planet. He's an alien. I can't relate to a guy that's covered in silver riding a surfboard, obviously, although that would be dope as hell. But it's like the idea of being away from home and stuff, that's actually kind of relatable to a lot of people. So it's like, that's what I think has been lost with a lot of writers nowadays, is that they go too far on the relatability, so far that the characters start to lose what makes them unique and powerful, honestly, for lack of a better term.
Exactly. Like Superman is supposed to be in a immigrant story, a refugee, and also an adoption story. But because they want to emphasize on the Kents are his real parents, or that the elves are actually evil, the assimilation and things like that, trying to have him even self-hating type things and demonizing Krypton, that is not relatable. And especially unprovoked when the elves are just as much as the saviors and, you know, love their son. They loved Krypton. But the tragedy of Krypton is that it's really the higher um, leaders that destroyed Krypton, not the elves. They wanted to save Krypton. They wanted to preserve their culture and everything like that. So that is what Superman is supposed to be. And also, he is a Moses allegory. You strip all of that away when you demonize Krypton.
Not only that, Britt, you know how else, you know how like even people that aren't adopted or aren't immigrants can relate to Superman, because you know what Superman has that that they do emphasize. He has the burden of responsibility because he is seen as this leader that everyone takes their cues for. Do you have any idea how much pressure that puts on a person?
Exactly.
So it's like, hey, if you're in a position at your job where there's like a lot of like responsibility put on you and people are looking to you to make not only decisions but to make the right decisions, yeah, you're gonna go with someone that, yes, obviously we don't have the powers of a Kryptonian sun god, but it's like, look, it's like we can relate with his position, not necessarily his like his birth, his heritage, or his like powers, but more like how other people look up to him.
Or even put him in the place of like a celebrity.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing with Diana being of two worlds or two responsibilities that can seem very like back and forth. And you can also deal with like maybe futility, because like, will man's world ever change? Because remember, she was sent to man's world for a very specific purpose, to encourage peace. But it's like, obviously our world doesn't get any more peaceful. So it's like an inevitability. You could have Diana say, what if I'm not like if I were writing this, hint, hint, Britt, there would be like, Diana would basically wonder, it's like, is this futile because man's world will always be violent and stuff? You could have Clark or like any of the Amazons say, yeah, but the thing about like having a mission is that you keep striving to it. Even if you get knocked down, you get back up and you keep going. And the very fact that like you have people like Clark and Diana to look up to serve as examples proves that that type of peace is possible. And even with like Superman dating Wonder Woman, the part that makes that very great from Wonder Woman's perspective is that it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt to the Amazons that man's world has changed from when they were like what would happen to them, because by their understanding of man, Clark should be in Justice Superman, and he's not.
Right. I mean, we did do the Roman holiday comparison, earlier episodes, and that, I would say, that sums up Clark and Diana, like, very much so, of their responsibility. You have the reporter, the princess, you have them wanting to just have this moment to live, to be free of responsibility, to embrace, themselves and life, enjoy life for at least a moment. And
Exactly.
that is what people want, to get away from their responsibilities, to just be free to be themselves.
Yeah, that's what Wonder Woman gives Superman on his side, because again, Superman's always had that warring. Superman, when written well, does have that warring between like human and Kryptonian. But Diana's like, no, you can bring them together and have that harmony. Or, Britt, what's the B word I say every episode?
Balance.
Bingo, gold star. So then we go to Shalla-Bal, the foundation of tragedy.
Okay, so here's the history of the pairing. Again, as we've gone over, that, well, that's basically what it is. It's a foundation of tragedy. She debuted in 1968 in Fantastic Four 48 through 50, created by Stan Lee. She was Norrin's first love on Zenla, and basically Norrin agreed to serve Galactus to save his planet and Shalla-Bal, but he was exiled from her forever, which is very tragic. I mean, to save the person that you love and put the world first. That is really cracking Diana for sure. Um, but that's pretty much it of their relationship. And you know, you can have past stories before he becomes Silver Surfer, but it's pretty much um limited, because they can't get back together unless you have Shalla-Bal go where he is now or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and she has when she became a Heralds of Galactus. I think if I remember correctly, and I believe maybe you have it on here. I don't think you do, but I believe it was Earth X is when they did the storyline, because in that one, so Earth X is basically Marvel's Kingdom Come, and in fact, I think it's what Alex Ross did before Kingdom Come, and basically it's on an Earth, but obviously in the future and stuff, and things have fallen apart. But both Silver Surfer and Shala are, both Norrin and Shalla-Bal are both Heralds of Galactus. I think that's the way that works out.
Oh, really? Well,
I
it
believe
it
so.
was that she has been brainwashed, possessed, you know, things like that. She has um gone through the whole agency type, loss,
Mm-hmm.
and their reunions are very brief but undone, like deliberately and everything like that, editorially forced. So it's not much of, like I said, an ongoing relationship. It's something that you do root for if you want them to somehow get together, because making that grand sacrifice.
Exactly. And Jargon says, wouldn't you say that at least in the last 25 to 30 years, Silver Surfer and Frankie Ray Nova had a bigger romance connection than Shalla-Bal? I don't know who Frankie Ray Nova is, so I'm going to defer to, I'll take your word for it, particularly nowadays. But so then we go to editorial handling overtime. So Britt, tell me about how Marvel handled this couple.
Yeah, so as I said, the brainwashing, the possession, and even having her as kind of like authoritative, I guess, at some point. But yeah, it's really like trying to figure out ways to keep them apart more than put them together. You have these little teases of them together, but of course they have to be split up. So it's a very back and forth thing. You can also compare this to Batcat in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a um not so much as the chase, but very much a we can't settle down because we want to be together, but it's something bigger that needs to that's calling for us.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to Dawn Greenwood, which is in it's the more modern love interest, right?
Yeah, so she was 2014 through 2018 by Dan Slott and Mike Allred. She's a human woman from Earth, and she meets Norrin just by chance. Their relationship unfolds gradually through conversations, traveling, curiosity, and shared wonder. Um, she does not have, of course, the baggage, of the limited tragedy, sacrifice that Shala has. She is basically the emotional support, and again, they do put the whole putting humanity back into Norrin and stuff, but it kind of works here, you know, kind of. I'll give it somewhat of a pass because of how it was written, not so much as he's being codependent on her.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to editorial intent here.
So she was meant to quote unquote humanize Silver Surfer again is a very difficult way of saying this. I just don't care for that. However, in a way of having that emotional vulnerability, the joy and the romance again, after everything that he's gone through, then that's a total difference, of finding love again. I think that will be a more apt description of their relationship. So it's a completed love story. He's um not over Shala and didn't think he would find love until he did.
Yeah, exactly. So then we go to the relationship conclusions for Shalla-Bal and Dawn.
So it's not, as I said earlier, it's not saying which one is better. It's not choosing one or the other. It's just a natural progression of a relationship. Shala isn't that natural, but it is a tragic something happened. So it's basically like a a widower falling in love again. So or
Which
again,
I like that.
yeah, you can basically put it in that sense, which makes sense. That is a very natural thing that happens. So Shala is the first love, Dawn is the second love, but it's not her being chosen second or think anything like that. It's just the natural way of things that happen in life.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you can think of like Dawn as king, not only the Wonder Woman thing, Kingdom Come Wonder Woman. Because remember, Clark was a widower in that story because Lois got murked. So it's I had to. So it's like no, it's like this other woman comes along. It's not his like second choice or anything like that, but it's like when he's ready to move on, she's there to help him, for lack of a better term.
Exactly.
Which that's 100% healthy because that I get to your point, that happens all the time. So overall conclusion of the couples is like it's one of those occasions where it's like with Thor and Sif and Jane, where both represent different like ideals of Super Wonder, but there's one that's like very like in there.
Exactly. It is honestly Super Wonder very much is between the two relationships, but as we said, it's still more connected to Dawn with the emotional connection, but with Shala, it does have that tragedy of, if you want to put editorial tragedy. Um, but as we concluded with every relationship, Super Wonder does work. It's just not a traditional relationship as to why it doesn't last as long as it can.
Yeah, exactly. It's really funny, Britt. The more these couples we reserve, the more I see why you're so bitter because it's like, why wouldn't this work?
I mean, honestly, when we compare these relationships, it's not like we go in knowing these relationships. Like I said earlier, I didn't know that Silver Surfer had two love interests. Um, so that, very much new to me. But with the research, it's kind of like, oh, Super Wonder is this, if not better or the same as whatever relationship we're comparing it with, it can work. But the only thing, and that's why we basically go through the editorial writers and fan history, is because that is what it boils down to. Just that it's not a traditional relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Which I often find the traditional relationships. It's kind of funny. There's very few traditional relationships I hate. That's the funny part about it. But here's the funny part about Diana. When people try to say Steve is a traditional relationship, Diana really doesn't have a traditional relationship.
No, Steve is not a traditional relationship. Honestly, he was either dead, unlikable, as, a bland sack of potatoes, or he was an old man. a father figure at that. No, not only just saying a father figure, but Diana did say that she thought of him as a father and also a big brother because spiritually within the I think it was the low run of Wonder Woman, but it said that Diana not only was the reincarnation, of course with Perez of the the spirit or the soul of the child that Hippolyta lost, but also um, Diana Rockwell.
Hmm.
She
Yeah.
was also the spirit of, or that unborn child too. So she was technically, spiritually, Steve's unborn sister, which is kind of like, okay, you're,
Mm.
you know,
Cue the banjo.
so yeah, Diana with Steve is very awkward.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think these people have thought this through. So, speaking of thinking things through very well, let's talk about the weight of Infinite Horizons. Of course, we always do a fan comparison story. But so, Britt, this is the one time where I've used an image from Tomasi's Superman and Wonder Woman, and it's actually appropriate.
You could have used Kingdom Come. Like,
Yeah, but I already used a lot of Kingdom Come in this, and particularly in the later parts of this slideshow. But I'm like, when I read your description, it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe at least just that one image, at least just the cover.
all right, it'll pass. So,
I love the like gritting I heard from that.
the tone is, a reflective, mournful, but hopeful. It does have your romantic ending, kind of like Kingdom Come did, but it's a lot of sadness within this story. So the core concept is a story of what remains after wars when quote unquote gods are forced to sit with the lives that they live. So it's basically like they have to go through their regrets, go through the should have, could have, would have types things, um, the life that they could have had, you know, and live with the regrets, but also get through them and how they can um, make amends with certain things and just have a life now, a peaceful life or, a loving life after everything that they've gone through.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so is I will also say that Immortal Wonder Woman goes into this too, but not that far into the future. Um, but Clark and Diana, they have been, I would say Diana, she didn't really have a love interest. So maybe Steve died like earlier on or whoever we want to say. I would say with this, um, we can use maybe Trevor Barnes here, because he died. So we can have him. Um,
You just made Phil Jimenez very happy.
right. Um, but it, honestly, I would say that this is very much post-crisis. Clark and Diana, they were very young. They fell in love, but duty made them split apart. Um, Clark, of course, got with Lois. Lois dies of old age or something happens earlier
She trips
on.
and falls.
Or he couldn't save her, so she did tragically pass. Either way, you want them to be, it depends on how old you want them to be, basically.
I love how Britt's trying to be, now Britt is trying to be the diplomatic one.
I mean, not really, because she can be, kick the bucket all day long. I don't care.
Of
Um,
course.
so with this, they have, outlived a lot of people though, if you want to have them that old. So that is pretty much why I said the Tomorrowverse as well. So Superman, he is the symbol of the one who's, survived. Um, relevance, and that goes into Kingdom Come. You know how the world chose Magog over him because it felt like he was an old school hero who didn't make the sacrifices needed, didn't kill the Joker. You have Wonder Woman, who is the warrior who learned patience. She has tried to do the peaceful route with everyone, and it, you know, it didn't go as she thought. She was so ambitious when she was younger, and life just kept coming at her, and a lot of tragedy has happened. Whether it is losing Hippolyta, losing Vanessa, Julia, um, going through things like that. And then Silver Surfer, um, exiled, who never stopped grieving. So they come together when the universe itself begins to collapse. And it's not by violence, it's basically an emotional imbalance. These three people, or, have kind of like the emotional control over the world. When you have these people who make the sacrifice to protect the world, and then when the world just turns on them, or they stop being the protectors and the world basically goes even more to shit, then, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So issue one after the war.
So, with, okay. So, Clark and Diana's dynamic, their reunion is a union and reunion type thing. It mirrors Surfer and Shalla-Bal. It's They have deep affection for one another, but they are emotionally distant, and but their love speaks with memory, rather than action. So they remember the times when they were much happier, much younger, but they don't know how to pretty much showcase that now because of everything that they've gone through together. Um, they talk about what was, then what could be, because they feel like they don't know if they can. At the beginning of the story, they don't know if they can actually bring themselves to get together, you know, in that romantic type way, or will it hurt? And that, I would say, is a reminder of special bonds, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Diana, she believes that love requires sacrifice, putting the world first, being selfless. And although Cal admires her for that, and he will do the same thing, he just feels like he doesn't agree so much because he wants to love her and be with her. And it's kind of like that's unfair. But at the same time, he feels like love is also about restraint, which is, again, making that sort of sacrifice and holding back, holding back yourself, your heart for the world. And that it ultimately hurts them.
Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, you know how we always have a portal open?
Yeah,
So I got a portal picture.
that's funny. So, yeah, so with this, they do love each other, but from afar, even when they're
Mm-hmm.
standing together, um, it's you can feel the love, but at the same time, you can feel that distance, or they're trying to be distant. Um, so yeah, you are correct to have the vortex thing because of course we have the across the cosmos, the world opens up for the stars or whatever. um the stars begin to dim, and it's just kind of like life is going bleak, you know so it's very much an abstract story, kind of like what we read with Robert, with
Mm-hmm.
that Silver Surfer run. You really want to go abstract with this story, but it's very much in the way of a visual of emotions and what you go through when you have loss and when you're trying to find love again. So, galactic entities detect something reality is echoing, and it's basically these emotional events um, that's unresolved and destabilizing the space time. And it goes into a lot of memories and stuff. So it's just a whole thing that the world evolves around emotion.
Yeah.
So I think we're on issue 2.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going on that. Okay. Issue 2, The Shape of Loss.
So this focuses on grief and memory and also love as a wound. It's how these three godlike beings love, and their love is so strong and powerful, meaning that when they love you to the end, and it will hurt them, you know, it will hurt them to the core, hurt them in a sense to be dramatic, because that is something that someone will write, probably us or probably DC, that, you know, Clark losing Diana hurts him more than being stabbed, by kryptonite or something like that. So it's not, so Silver Surfer tells his story to, when they meet, he tells his story to Clark and Diana is listening, and she also understands, of course, because of the lasso, but she is the person who understands and has that empathy for anyone. And she feels that same, she echoes that feeling of loss, and Cal does too. So with this, is basically each one mirroring the other becomes each other's conscience.
I like that a lot. That works. That works very well.
And also you have Dawn. She comes in and she is a reminder of, the love that Silver Surfer can have, but he has to get over um his own emotional grievance from Shala to, you know, open up again to love Dawn. And that's the same way Clark and Diana has to go through their love and loss journey too. They, I wouldn't say that Clark and Diana's love and loss journey is specifically of a love, because no, it's really because of the world and how they can now go back to being that balance and being those protectors that they need to be for the world, but at the same time have um their love without judgments or feeling that they can't have it because of the world's expectations.
Yeah, exactly. So, issue 3.
So issue 3 is
Real quick,
basically a
real quick. This is the only other time I used a Tomasi Superman Wonder Woman image. Let me explain. When
oh
I
my
was
god.
when I was reading the slide, this is the image I thought was the most appropriate.
All right, it works.
Yeah, I was like, come on, give me this credit.
All right. So basically, this is a flashback of how Clark and Diana started their relationship, how they were young and they were ambitious and ready to protect the world together. But again, they reality check and the world is cruel, the world is judgmental. So they had to make that choice of, and Cal, of course, he thinks that he is doing right by Diana and protecting her, from that type of scrutiny and getting in the way of her reputation, what she's trying to do. So he thinks that, um, maybe he can work this out, even if it is a public relationship. It's like, okay, basically, you all can, of course, he wouldn't say this out loud, but it's just thought of basically go to hell because this is our relationship. It's a
Hmm.
private thing, and we're doing our job protecting you. So why are you judging us? That's basically, honestly, that that was kind of the vibe, that Charles Sewell gave in a very much more happier sense of issue 12 when Diana says, "Oh, we're kissing in public," and I was like, "Well, let them look." It was kind of like, okay, screw them. We're together publicly. This is what it is. They can take it or leave it. That is the type of relationship that they should have, and it shows that growth that Cal doesn't care about, you know, having to hide himself, having to hold back himself. He can be much happier, with being truthful within himself and with everyone around him. He doesn't have to live in that bottle of lies of omission. So within that, that is when they become closer. And the Silver Surfer also, he realizes that he loves Dawn and that within his journey, Shala is still with him spiritually. So it's not that he is replacing her. He's just going on with life.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of like, yeah, and I love that sentiment of Clark and Diana saying, "Okay, so we're together. Screw you if you have any problems with it." Because it's like that's the thing about it. It's like too many. It's like yes, the world comes first, but here's the thing: there's a difference between the world comes first and what this is. Because what this is like no, what they mean by that, at least the way the book explains it. So I would encourage people to read Doomed. What Diana means by that is if like let's say like if like Clark has to if like Diana's like a, fighting a foe, let's say Doomsday, but like the world is being invaded by like Brainiac or stuff, Clark will prioritize the immediate threat to like the entire world because also he trusts that Diana can handle herself in a fight. So it's like she can handle that right now. It's a perfect example of this, actually. Superman Wonder Woman 1, when Diana's handling Doomsday and Superman goes saving a plane or like a ship or something like that. That's essentially the way I kind of got it. It's like, no, obviously we're there together, but they're never going to let that relationship get in the way of doing their jobs. Whereas opposed with the Tom King run,
Exactly. I mean, King really showed that he has this obsession with wanting to emphasize romance and stuff. But his pattern is the MC will basically put everything on hold, will sacrifice everything. Basically, no one else matters but this person. He did that with even Batman. He had Batman suicidal for
it's
Selena.
suicide is by Batman.
And then for Diana, she did not care for her Amazon sisters who were murdered by, like I said, the institute that Steve worked for. Um, and her whole thing about getting revenge from the Sovereign, she didn't say, "I'm getting revenge for my sisters." She said about Steve only. And
Yeah,
then,
he this man that killed my love, and I go, what?
so none of your sisters though that were killed, they
Mm-hmm.
what are they? Yeah. So no, Clark and Diana's relationship again is all about putting being selfless. While honestly, Diana's relationship with Steve and Clark's relationship with Lois is very selfish.
Yeah, exactly. We get to the transformation begins.
So with that, you see the change of to be a little bit happier. Um, you have um, Diana and Clark, they are, I guess, trying to go on dates in a
Hmm.
sense. Um, they basically want to start over. As I said, they go on dates. They are laughing again together. You know, they even if they do argue, it's kind of like those little, just little disagreements where they can see each other's point and come to an agreement. You know, they and also, you know, have these moments where they hold hands or have these, you know, love touches and things like that. Um, then they, it just felt like they started over, and as I said, to be young again. And with Silver Surfer, he accepts that, you know, Shala was the love that he had in a sense a younger him, you know, what was, but Dawn is what he is now, and he has to move forward. So he again chooses to live forward, and maybe one day he will meet Shala again, or maybe that is the reality of, like I said, life is, you know, he has to move on.
I like that. You could have when Clark and Diana are saying they feel young again. You could be like, and that says a lot for immortals.
Right. Because even Jim Krieg or Craig said that Clark and Diana can be together for 150 years and it still feels like it's not enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, well, also here's the thing. The funny part is I love in Crisis when they say, "Oh yeah, we're not immortal, she is." I'm like, oh, bro, as long as that sun stays yellow, you are immortal.
Exactly.
So
I
it's
think,
like, what are you doing?
yeah, that whole thing wasn't right, but whatever.
It was a little contrived, but hey, you know what? I'll go
Right.
with it. Considering it's the best animated adaptation of Diana ever, I'll take some of that. Anyway, so issue 2, what we choose to carry. I mean, issue 4, sorry, what we choose to carry.
So here is acceptance, renewal, and that, you know, quiet hope that I talked about earlier. So this is basically, you can have the ending of Kingdom Come. You know, Clark and Diana have now forgiven themselves, forgiven each other. They've started a new life. You know, you see Silver Surfer, he has um released his guilt, but he keeps Shala spiritually and in his memory. Dawn, he is openly loving her, you know, unapologetically, and Dawn is like his new life. The cosmos are basically correcting itself now because love is now free, um, and it has a new light. With Clark and Diana, they fall in love again, and again, you see this sort of way, even with the whole world, you know, that the world sees love differently, that they begin to teach not to judge, you know, relationships. And again, you see Clark and Diana as this celebrity couple that we saw in New 52. And that splash page that
Hmm.
we had, I think it was in issue 3 or 4.
I believe so. I know exactly what you're talking. Are you talking about the one of them kissing and then the background is everyone reacting?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have that. And that's basically what you see visualized here is at first you have the world being, you know, rejecting them. Some people are for them, you know, but you have basically the loudmouths, which spiritually um invokes, you know, the fans and everything. And then you have people now after everything seeing that, you know what, we judged them too quickly, or that's none of our business, just like any other celebrity couple. Sometimes they will be hated, sometimes they will be loved, sometimes they will be obsessed with, things like that. But at the end of the day, it is the couple, and what's between them. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much what Clark and Diana learn. So you have, as I said, the ending of Kingdom Come where they are living their life, where they're on the farm, Diana and Clark too, teaching, um, they are still protectors of the world and they are able to enjoy life now.
Exactly. So then that out was awesome. I love it. It's almost as if this would be a great story, like if they ever brought back the new 52, and this is how Clark and Diana got back together if they wanted to keep all the BS that happened.
Exactly.
Personally,
Yeah.
I would prefer we just pretend that everything past issue 12 of Superman Wonder Woman did not happen, but sometimes I don't get what I want.
Right. Definitely.
So, Britt, tell me about Green Lantern number 13.
All right. So here is the Absolute Power tie-in, which honestly didn't mind it because it kept the story going instead of just going within absolute power.
Mm-hmm.
Hal is stripped of his ring, he is captured and everything like that. But again, he keeps going, and it's a lot of different stories being told here from different perspectives. Whether you have Alan Scott and Jessica Cruz, and Hal, um, and within this is basically putting, you know, more and more of Hal and Carol together. Um, and this is where you also meet the new Lantern, Sorrow.
The sad sack, the Steve Trevor core.
Oh my God, Steve definitely deserves the Sorrow ring for sure.
I will call this the Steve Trevor core.
So yeah,
the emblem is a sack of potatoes.
Oh my God. So it is still emotional driven with the action. The art is still good, still very um bright, I would say. Um I prefer the original art, you know,
Well, yeah, it's
but
Germanico.
yeah, but this is servable, for what it is. But it also lands on a cliffhanger, as with Jeremy, he does a lot of that, and he also sets things up. It's a lot, like I said, it's a lot of things to juggle here with a lot of perspectives, but he teeters from, kind of having so many parts moving. But it works for what it is, and I gave it a 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, uh, I agree. And by the way, one of my favorite panels is the very beginning where Hal is getting his ass kicked, but he's smiling because he's like, "She came back to me. I am the happiest man in the world."
Right.
That was the greatest thing in the world. I love it. And yeah, the sad sack lanterns. It's just, I love where it's like, I always say, can we stop adding new lantern cores? But honestly, this is the funniest one. He was so sad that he got jilted at the altar that he made another lantern core. That's how Atrocitus actually created the red lanterns. He was so pissed he made the red lanterns.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh my God. But a lot of this stuff, Britt, what's been set up, so he wrapped up a story I think end of last year that is being teased in this. When we get to that storyline, I'll tell you why. But it's one of those storylines where Robert and I were like, oh my God, he pulled it off. It's like, because, well, also he was one of the writers on the Green Lantern the animated series, which was incredible. So it's like, is there any surprise that he understands Green Lanterns really well? But you'll also want to pay attention to the Green Lantern Amazo android, because that's going to be pretty important. And he does something that when I was watching this, I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here. It actually works extremely well. But yeah, I agree at 8.5. Yes, I prefer Zermatico more, but you know, it's like it's still good enough art and it's still great. And yeah, this was one of the Absolute Power tie-ins that I actually really dug because yeah, to your point, it's still telling the same story, but it just has the set dressing of Absolute Power. The advantage that Adams has is that a lot of his storyline takes place off Earth, like on Oa. So it's like he can juggle Absolute Power and like his regular storyline, and that in and of itself is very difficult to do because he does it in a way where it gives equal time to each storyline and doesn't feel like one's lacking.
Exactly.
Which is very complicated. Speaking of other storylines, Bomb 13. Now, this is basically the Image Comics cameo issue. We got Savage Dragon, Shadowhawk, a weird Spawn-like character, Invincible. And the funny thing about this is very Spawn thing because if you notice in the issue where it has like the panels, but on the side it's just text, that's straight up like Spawn narration. So that's what the writer is homaging with that. I also love the invention of a character named Editor Girl, who literally she will like censor characters with a red marker. So I'm like, okay, you know what? I like that. That's really funny. And I really like the way that's done. And I also like how all of the other characters are like on for Bomb Queen, like ruling, which I'm like, okay, that's interesting. It's kind of interesting to see now the city is like more in line with Bomb Queen. So that's kind of cool. I really like that. And this is definitely a palate cleanser because last week I said that like a few of the issues, like they really went back to that like very vulgar like part of it. But with this, it's like, okay, it went back to this. And it's like, okay, hey, the Savage Dragon. I know you. I know you. I know you. So that was great. And the art is pretty cool as well. So yeah, I give it an 8 out of 10. Still fun. Now,
Right. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you talk about the Venom character. Did you notice the demon cat that Bomb Queen had?
Yep.
So yeah, that is the form of the demon cat, Ashe.
Wow.
Yeah, very
I don't know what to tell
twisted.
you, Bomb Queen, but your cat has a condition. That is the most extreme form of rabies I have ever seen. Oh yeah. So how bad is your cat's rabies? Well, she turns into a black goop monster.
Yeah, it's very much a demon cat that is, well, it's a lot of twisties with that.
Oh, this series twisted? No kidding. But yeah, that's really cool. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, that's why Robert was telling me pay attention to that cat. I'm like, okay, but it's like I'm like blown away with that. Oh God, but it's pretty good. I really like that. But yeah, it's like a lot of different things are being like thrown up here, and I think the next issue involves She-Spawn, which is kind of cool. I like that because it's with Image, you can see all these other characters show up, so that's actually really cool. So Britt, so we're reviewing a Wonder Woman issue, but it's a unique one. Stephanie Williams is writing the 2-issue like interim story before we get to the Wonder War. Now, I'll give my thoughts and then yours. So my thoughts on this is like, look, for what she had to work with, it's pretty compared to the past. This is a pretty solid issue, and the return of Strife. And I go, okay, that's really nice. So when I was talking about this with Jim from Weird Science, one of the things that I said is, wouldn't it be hilarious if? So King claims he has the voice for Trinity down. Wouldn't it be hilarious if he just says, oh yeah, the B word Trinity, that was just her under the influence of Strife the entire time? That would be hilarious.
I mean, I guess that is a cop out, really. It's just because you don't know how to write her. And honestly, I don't think he knows. He didn't even know how to write her in the Trinity book itself. So I'm not sure how you're supposed to write her any different from that. Um, Obviously, he still does not know anything about a mother and daughter relationship, so that goes within that. And he definitely um was being very honest when he said that Trinity and Steve's story goes into the Wonder Woman book, with the fact that, as Solicit, pretty much allude to, that Diana is going to be dead, and
Well, we knew that.
Trinity Trinity is going to basically be solo, you know, with the Wonder Woman book.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, and it's like we knew that Wonder Woman was gonna. So my prediction again is going to be that Wonder Woman is again Wonder Woman's still gonna die. That's my prediction, which I think that's a pretty safe prediction. But what I also think is gonna happen is Diana is going. So Trinity is gonna go back in time. Now, there's two places where she could go back in time. She could go back in time to obviously to stop Emily from attacking that bar, which would stop everything from happening. It would also stop Trinity from existing. So there is that. However, the other thing that could happen is she could go back to stop Emily from being shot in the face, and this could be King saying that like Emily turned evil because she didn't have a mother and like she was jealous of Trinity. But it's like either way, it's like it's not the best. But I'm like, at the very least, it wouldn't be like if they wanted to go in that direction, it wouldn't be the worst. But my prediction, I'm still leaning toward she goes back in time and sacrifices her own life in order to undo all this stuff.
I mean, either way is bad, because you're saying that Liza turned evil because she didn't have a mother, but she grew up on a whole island of Amazons, of women who can be mothers. So, and then even Diana, are you telling me that Diana treated her badly, that she didn't become that mother figure for her? So yeah, either way, that's really bad.
Well, yeah, but we already know that, at least according to the writing, King does not have very high opinions of Diana's parenting skills. So that's that.
Well,
Let's
that's
be
true.
clear on that, Britt. But it's
That's
like,
true.
the thing is, I could see them trying to like at least repair that. But with this, it's like, look, I'm like, and the other thing that I liked about this is because, as you know for sure, it's like in the past, one of my complaints with King's writing of particularly Yara is that he treats her like all of his other characters, where like she is like a person that like swears like a sailor. But at the very least, with this, I appreciate that Stephanie at least writes Yara, and really all the Amazons for that matter, more this is going to sound bad, but screw it, more human than like the other, more human and less
Robotic.
yes, less robotic, exactly. You can feel the emotion even with Diana, particularly impaired with Jeff Spoke's art of like Diana kind of shaking. I felt like that was well done, even though Diana's like, because Diana has been through the ringer in this story. But
I mean, she been through the ringer this whole run of hot garbage.
yeah,
But
exactly. But it's like essentially I'm just like, and with the other characters is like I do kind of dig that like at least the Wonder Girls actually did something. And here's the thing, what's also really funny is when Jim and I were talking about this issue, one of the things that I said is like it's almost like Stephanie is trying to say that Diana should have brought the kid to the island to leave with the Amazons before she went to a war zone.
yeah, I mean, honestly, the whole thing is so contrived.
Yeah, it's
Um,
true.
I think that Stephanie maybe was given notes from King, or editorial, but at the same time, with her own writing and seeing how maybe she saw the whole character assassination, so she tried to spruce up a little bit of this tragedy of a story.
That's why I am a little like
Lenient.
to this, because and someone that has enjoyed her Wonder Woman writing in the past, it's mainly like, look, with what she was given to work with, I think she did a pretty at worst decent job.
That's true. I mean, as I said, she's trying to make lemonade out of these very sour, almost
Out of the sack of potatoes. I had
those rotten, rotten potatoes for sure.
Yeah, so it's like, that's why I'm a little bit more like, okay, she did the best she could. So it's like it's also the fact that I haven't enjoyed a mainstream Wonder Woman book this much in years, and it feels weird.
Yeah, I mean, well, ew, that's kind of like the whole analogy is just wrong now, because now you have me thinking of like potato juice. And I know
That
that's nasty.
exists?
I don't know. I don't even think I want to know.
Let me see. I'm going to Google this. Potato juice. Let me see if this actually exists. I can't believe I'm Googling this on a SuperWonder podcast. My God.
Well, you're the one
I blame you, Britt.
No, I blame you, because I said lemon.
It exists.
It exists. I know that's bland as hell.
Oh my gosh. It's derived from raw potatoes. It's a nutrient-dense, alkali-rich drink with vitamin C and B. Oh my gosh, that's funny. It does exist.
Rich, my ass. I guarantee you that's bland as hell.
Well, it fits because it's Steve Trevor, and ironically, it's a yellow drink, much like Steve's hair. But it's like,
oh my God.
I know, right? But it's like, at the very least, it's like, and it feels good to see Wonder Woman characters actually being used, like Strife. What?
Honestly, what's weird about this is that Strife does not. How does she exist? And
yeah, she was
Strife,
she was killed, by the way.
Strife was used in Azzarello's run, as the main antagonist, pretty much. And then you have her as a main antagonist in Superman and Wonder Woman. So when people look up Strife and they see Azzarello in Superman and Wonder Woman, don't you think that's going to cause questions?
Yeah. And particularly that design, because that's the new 52 design, let's face it.
Yeah, so you're like, DC is really not thinking anything through. And the thing is, to use Strife and to, try to have her connection with the Amazons and everything like that, that's the one thing that doesn't make sense, is you're supposed to just go with the flow of these relationships or these interactions and dynamics. Strife did not care for the Amazons in that way. She never really interacted with them as closely. She doesn't know Nubia. She doesn't know the Wonder Girls. So it really feels very contrived. Even with this Diana, it does not fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, it's like, would you want to do? Ignore Trini's existence? I'm going to answer that right now. Yes.
Yeah.
We all want to ignore this character.
Yeah, it really just, it's the fact that Strife doesn't have any type of motivation to care, for Trinity like that. Like, it really does not make sense.
Exactly. But it's like, besides that, and it's kind of funny. Speaking of not caring for Trinity, she just hawks the baby off and goes to meditate. It would be hilarious if Diana returns with the long hair, like she has been completely like rejuvenated and she's smiling and stuff.
Yeah, that ugly ass braid needs to go.
It's the worst look for the character like ever. It's
because it looks like, because it's so like, the way her hair is slicked down, like it's shaved, and then she has a rat tail in the back. No, that does not work for Diana at all.
Exactly. So, Britt, so give me like your general review of the issue.
Um, mm, I'm finding it. I really, as I told you, I really don't have that much to say about it because it just feels like it. Of course, it has to go within King's run, you know. But Stephanie did a decent job with what she was given, and so honestly, I would give it a 7 or maybe a 6.5, 6.5, only because knowing how it ties into King's Run, and I really just don't care for that damn Chucky baby. And Strife is like, her inclusion just does not make sense to me. And the thing is, a lot of this you have to turn off half your brain to accept the contrivances, and I just can't do that.
Well, it's better than the Mouseman arc. We had to shut off all of your brain. Half is better.
I mean, if you have to even just turn off 1/4 or whatever, that is just terrible.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we're gonna, so let's, so that was, I'll give you that. I gave it, I probably get, I think I gave it a 7.5 when I was talking to Jim about it, because it's like, let me put it this way, it's the first time I read a Wonder Woman issue and not out like burst of vein, so that's an improvement.
I mean, very low bar, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But now let's do a little question and answer, and then we'll wrap up. So you guys can ask us any questions about SuperWonder, Shalla-Bal, Norrin Radd, anything you guys want to talk about. But yeah, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, in terms of like other characters that I see like needing like, well, here's the thing. It's like I maintain my belief that the King run ends. And here's the thing. Let's say I were King's editor. That would be hilarious, but let's say I was King's editor. If I were the like editor for King's run and he came to me with this story, with the whole Sovereign story, what I would say is, okay, that's what you have, you have the bones here, but what we need to do is, how about instead of creating the Sovereign, we actually use a Wonder Woman villain, such as Veronica Cale. Strife could have even worked for this, or like use the gods. But instead of like, because here's the thing about Wonder Woman is she has the false reputation. It's false, but she has a reputation nonetheless of not having compelling villains. So if she doesn't have compelling villains and you keep adding villains, it doesn't let you develop the already existing rogues. So you're just adding on to the problem.
I mean, honestly, Sovereign is just bootleg Duke of Deception.
Bootleg what?
Duke of Deception.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they read it, so he is the Duke of Deception.
Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, as you said, she does have very interesting rogues, but you need to actually use them.
That's the problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Stop creating new villains. You know, first of all, another thing, Cersei needs a total character redesign, because that horse jockey look that she has is just not hitting at all.
Horse jockey look. Yeah, that is that. Can we go back to, like, again, this is why I think what DC needs to do with Wonder Woman is to re-Perez her, in other words. Like, go back to like the look and feel of that series, because that's where, because the number one run that everyone points to as like the peak Wonder Woman, whether or not it's for PR or they actually mean it. It is the Perez run of Wonder Woman. So why aren't you looking at what made that run so iconic and repeating that?
Exactly, because honestly, trying to use Greg Rucka's run as a source or something like that is not, because it honestly feels very mean-spirited, and he takes away so much of Diana's personality. Even Kelly Thompson, she said that she loves Greg Rucka's run, but at the same time, she felt like he made Diana seem distant, like she was a celebrity, like, out of touch, and she didn't have personality, and it's like, well, yeah, that's what we've been saying for a very long time. And you can definitely tell that from his rebirth run. Diana was very ditzy, airheaded and unemotional. She felt like she was out of touch. She didn't feel like the Perez version, if you want to go back to, quote unquote, the post crisis um, era for rebirth. It didn't feel like that. Yeah, he used the Perez um, Aries design, and he tried to invoke some of Perez, personality with year one, but that just wasn't Diana. You know, it really felt like his own Elseworlds. Instead of going back to the very beginning with Perez. You can do homages. You can have Perez name in sort of like an Easter egg or something like that. But when you don't respect his actual story, then what are you doing?
Or try to change it as well.
Right. Uh, I was talking to Jid earlier, earlier, and it was either yesterday or the day before. But with peeping certain things out and seeing that with Greg Rucka's '03 run, how he was the first to actually have Steve like look a little bit younger in the
I
post
do
crisis
remember
era.
that.
So it felt like, those kind of seeds were planted for his rebirth run. So, and that's pretty much all his rebirth run is a retcon of not only post crisis and New 52, but also a continuation, revisionism, and retcon and everything, all of the above, of his '03 run. And you wanted Steve to be there. But why? Because you want to glorify him as this good soldier, American soldier boy or something like that. You also have Cheetah, Minerva, saying that she is kind of like his favorite character. So you like forcing this sympathy for a racist character. Um and what he gives to Barbara is basically Julia and Vanessa's role. And that's kind of like, no, that's not what that is, because you are missing the fundamental foundation, which is the mother and daughter relationship.
Yeah, that's like that's the funny thing about it, because it's like it's like, again, it's like, and that's the thing about the Rucka run itself. It's like, yeah, it was very that was pretty much any Superman Wonder Woman book in DC Rebirth was the epitome of mean spirited. But then you get like the right, because again, it's like everyone says that like the Perez run is like the gold standard, and I'm like, bro, you're just, honestly, again, it's like I don't want to hear any other Wonder Woman writer say, oh, the Perez one is the gold standard, and then push the Steve Trevor relationship so hard. Like, I'm sorry, because Perez was Perez is the reason why Steve was older in post crisis, and he set the foundation for which Diana really grew. And that's why one of the things that I think Diana needs is a reboot. I don't mean like full reboot and like ignore and like pretend certain events didn't happen, because that will take way too long that'd be way too complicated to just do it with Diana. What you do is you essentially you Okay, bring Steve Trevor back, but make it as a result of cheating death. He is aged up. Then get rid of Trinity somehow. Find some way to do that. Like, go back to the way Diana looked and feel. Even go back to the bikini suit if you want to take away the armor. Essentially, re-Perez Wonder Woman so that you can go back to her fundamental core of who the character is, and then you can start building her up so you can editorially reboot, not like story-wise reboot.
Right. I mean, let me see. Honestly,
Be
Diana,
reasonable, Britt.
I'm finding it. How to reboot without, you don't want to be contradictory, a hypocrite, and take things away. Honestly, just kill off Steve and you can fill in the blanks with Diana's origin, I would say, because I mean, honestly, even Rucka's year one and his whole rebirth run has pretty much been ignored and kind of retconned in a way out. Some references here and there, but it's not really.
Fun fact, something tells me that his Cheetah thing will be undone
yeah, it would be
shortly
ignored.
thereafter.
So I would say that you're right. You really don't have to reboot her in that sense. It's just like soft rewrite, I would say, to make things make sense and to fill in the blanks. So that's pretty much how you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I say re-Perez her. Just go back to the way the world was set up. Also, bring back Vanessa, not the twisted version in the King run where she is like that. She has this unrequited love for Diana. That's never been a thing with Vanessa. What you do,
I don't know how.
I don't know where that came from either, Britt.
Where that came from.
When I was reading Wonder Woman 750 for Amazon Answers, Britt, I deliberately went into that. I'm like, okay, so what does this look like? Oh, so nothing. Not even the other Silver Swan was like in love with Diana. So I'm like, I don't know where that came from. And it's like, it's not a thing. But I would bring back Vanessa as a hero this time, redefine the Silver Swan thing, and maybe bring back Julia. Maybe, who knows? And put Hippolyta. I don't think you need to like make Hippolyta queen of the Amazons. Actually, NJ has a fantastic suggestion. I wish they were here, but it's the idea of like bring back Hippolyta and have Hippolyta hang out in Man's World with Diana and like see more of like the way Man's World is now.
That honestly would be fantastic.
Like Diana is essentially, I'm going to say something, Britt. Bear with me. Diana is the Steve Trevor for Hippolyta in that she is her mother's guide.
Say Julia or something. Not so much as Steve, because, yeah, we can say.
Okay, how about this? She is the Julia for Hippolyta.
But it also depends on which Hippolyta are we using. Are we using JSA Hippolyta? That pretty much,
Hey, Cameron, he's got a great idea. Also, have her reunite with the JSA and how they miss her. That's another great thing.
Right. So, do you have JSA Hippolyta, or do you have, Perez Hippolyta that she's gone through a lot from Man's World and Hercules, but she's never gone to Man's World, within this present time?
Actually, I prefer. I honestly, here's the thing. Stick with what I do want to say. Stick with the Hippolyta from the JSA, because here's what that does, Britt. That gets rid of any possibility of Diana being like ancient by the time DC. By the time she shows up in Man's World, because I always said, here's the great thing about Hippolyta being Wonder Woman in World War II, because a lot of atrocities happened in World War II. So that explains why Hippolyta is so hesitant for Diana to go to man's world. But Diana, in this like proposed story that you and I are doing, or like discussing, but probably doing at some point, let's face it, it's us. It's Hippolyta is seeing that, yes, man's world has its problems, but it's not as like, it's not as like crazy as it was when she was Wonder Woman.
Exactly.
So it's like, so you could, so again, if you want to prove, and here's the thing, I really hate it when writers say that they're coming on the run to prove that Diana's awesome, because A, we already know the character's awesome. So let's start with that. We already know the character's awesome. But second off, show us this in this way, with like Diana going to Wonder Woman, or like Diana showing her mother. No. Yeah, and you need to be artful about this, particularly if you're going with the traumatic story of the Amazons. You have to be respectful of that trauma, because too many writers will say that and say, "Oh, we had no reason to be upset about man's world." Now you have to be, the term I always use, balanced about it.
Right. We have a lot, you have a foundation with Perez. And whether you want even Jimenez, I would say, kind of ruined the relationship that Diana and Hippolyta had, because he wrote her like Diana like a spoiled brat, at some point, and she didn't understand her mother. That was the one thing that Perez emphasized on, was understanding of being a mother and daughter, and trying to, keep this relationship of guidance, but also admiration and this undeniable love that they had.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you need to like, again, if you handle this properly, that's when you get to like show me why Diana's awesome. Don't keep telling me this, because if you're trying to say that like Diana's punk rock and she's this badass, and I go, no, you've given me all you've told me is that you think Diana's a good warrior. She is, but here's the problem with that. All you give me, if all you're focusing on is the violent like Amazon part, in other words, the Injustice Wonder Woman, that's everyone's favorite version. I'm sorry, you're not writing Wonder Woman. You're just writing Xena mixed with Red Sonja.
Exactly.
Like, don't tell me you love Wonder Woman and stuff if you're only writing half the character. You just love half of Wonder Woman.
Right. There is a balance between her warrior side and her being an ambassador. Will at some point of the story one outweigh the other? Yes, because it really depends on the story. But you are to show both sides, though, at some point.
And if you can't do that, then don't write the character. If you don't know how to do that, then it's really easy. Don't take the job when they're offered when it's offered to you. Just don't do it. If you don't think that you can do both properly, don't. It's
right.
Again,
it's
really that simple, because again, it's like, if you're saying that like you didn't want a writer and stuff, that's fine. Don't do it, because here's the thing. If you approach it like that, then guess what? Your heart's not going to be in it. Perez loved one. Has not been a writer since Perez, maybe Jimenez actually, that I would say loved Wonder Woman.
I think Jimenez loves Diana, but it's also kind of like a self-insert too.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying you could still feel the love he has for the character in general. That's why I'm like, even Rucka to some degree in the post-crisis run, not necessarily in the rebirth run. The only one where I also did not really feel a lot of love for Diana was the Simone run, but that's for a lot of different reasons. But it's like it's like there were a few writers that hop on Wonder Woman that you could tell are like the ones that really loved her. And isn't it ironic that those are the ones that people point to and say these are the good runs? Isn't it funny?
Right.
It's almost like if your heart's not in the book, you're not going to write a good story for Wonder Woman.
No, they honestly, it feels like they're trying to um it's like they're trying to prove something that they can do better than the previous run or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, everyone wants to be the next Perez, and I'm like, no, don't do that. The other thing that's interesting about this, Britt, is like when you deal with like all these other writers, it's like, particularly with like the current run, it's more of him trying to pitch other characters he'd rather be writing by his own admission, with like Detective Chimp, or with his constant inclusion of Batman. But I'm like, you're writing Wonder Woman, you're not writing Batman. Occasional cameos are fine, obviously, because those happen. But it's like when Diana is a passive participant in her own book, that's where the problems arise.
Exactly.
But it's like no one really like. It's like he doesn't get the heat for this, and I'm like, look, I'm not for harassment. I want to be very clear about that. And I'm like, look, all it is it's even what the hashtag's about. Not about getting him fired. It's about moving him to a book where his heart is in it. Because hey, there are plenty of characters he writes well. And also the other thing. Never go into a book saying, I plan on writing 100 issues. Because guess what that leads to? You inevitably have to write filler to essentially kill issues, kill time, in other words. No, just go in and say, I want to write a good story, however many issues that takes. If it takes 100 issues, great, fine, if I'm allowed to do that. But if it takes like 12 issues, okay, you know what? But I told a pretty good story. Never go in with those high expectations, because inevitably that's not going to happen.
But he also already said that he did not want to write the character, that he doesn't know her and things like that. That's pretty much why he created Trinity, and also feels this self-insertion with Steve, because he does not know Diana. He knows her in a surface level sense of, using other characters to kind of have this reaction to Diana. But he does not understand Diana herself. And understanding Diana isn't having her mourn or, praise Steve. That's not who she is.
Well, and let's be clear about that. She would mourn him if he died. Of course, Diana's not a psychopath, but she wouldn't mourn to the detriment of her mission, because what comes first, Britt?
The world.
Thank you. That one line by Charles Sewell is literally the most genius summation of Superman and Wonder Woman I have ever read.
Right.
But it's like no, the world always has to come first. And honestly, here's the thing. It's like that proves to me, and it's like, look, here's the other thing. If you want to write a Steve Trevor book, write a Steve Trevor book. That's it.
No one is going to buy it, though.
No one's going to buy it, but here's the thing. His fans will, and that's fine for him. And I'm like, okay, fine. If you want to write a Steve Trevor book, hell, I've come up with ideas for books that I think would have actually, like, done a pretty decent idea with Steve, but it's like all obviously DC won't do that. But essentially, like, if you don't, yeah. So again, it's like, now here's the thing. Yes, Steve Trevor matters, because I know Word Balloon had a fit when people were talking about they don't want the love interest to have. Well, actually, he was talking about how the fan base wants the Wonder Woman wants the book to be women only. Okay, that's a overgeneralization, because yes, there are some of them that want the book to be women only, and yes, you're going to have people on that extreme all the time. However, what you're going to have to realize is that you're writing Wonder Woman. That's like if you have a Superman book where literally the entire book is about Lois. Because here's the thing. When you look at the Sovereign, even, he didn't do anything. She didn't do anything to fight him. It was mostly Steve Trevor that took down his network and the Wonder Girls, sat on her ass and made a statue to Steve. And I'm like, at what point do you say, okay, I really just want to write, I don't want to write Diana, I want to write Steve Trevor? And I'm like, at least be honest about it.
Right. It's such a, I mean, if you want to call out sexism, misogyny, this male obsession or whatever like that, anti-feminist, anti-women, that is what King is essentially writing by forcing Steve into the narrative from, Trinity's birth, using the clay origin to force a man within it, when the reason for the clay origin was not to have men involved in the first place because of what men has done to the Amazons. So you're already just ruining that, just, whatever type of connection you wanted to have, that's already a no. Then he says in one of the interviews that Diana's purpose and her motivation is Steve when he crash lands on the island. No.
Tell me you didn't read
wrong.
Perez without telling me you didn't read Perez.
But it's not even just Perez. It's the fact that Diana's entire existence was before Steve. It was, she has always been very curious about things, and she wanted to know of man's world. Basically, what New 52 did when the Secret Origins issue, when you see basically the beginning and Diana says basically Steve is her ticket, that's what he was. It was like she needed a way off the island, whether it is the contest to be just a representative or for him to crash land on the island. Now, for me, honestly, I would not have Steve crash on the island anymore, because it just feels like very much going on the male fantasy too of, this army guy, random army guy that doesn't mean much of anything, lands on an island full of women. That's very much a male's type fantasy. So I wouldn't give that satisfaction to the 5 Steve Trevor fans. I wouldn't. It would be the contest, Diana becoming the representative of her island, and maybe she meets Steve because of protocols, the government getting in the way and everything. Then she meets Steve, But other than that,
he could be a liaison officer.
Yeah, he can be something like that. And that's it. But even the contrivance of having him, die or whatever and go to hell in the absolute verse for them to meet, it was just like you had to do that in a way of him doing the same thing, being on the island. And it's just kind of like, it was so out of nowhere and very much just a traditional way of doing things, even if it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this as well recently. It's like when I would if I could redo Diana, honestly, what I would essentially do is because when you look at the Perez origin, she leaves the island even before she takes Steve with her when she leaves with Hermes. So it's not like it's not like it's like he's the one that brings her to man's world. When you actually look at it, he's not. So it's like you do that and you make it where like she shows up in man's world, and it's like because she's an ambassador, she is like the government would assign like a liaison officer to like acclimate her to like America and the culture and stuff. Then she can meet a journalist named Clark Kent that I'm sure she's not going to have an on again off again romantic relationship with, but who knows? But you essentially do that, and it's like here's the thing again. Steve can play a role in Wonder Woman. We're not saying get rid of Steve completely, although that would be hilarious. It's just to use him with use him properly because the love interest, no matter which character. Because here's the thing about this. Yes, even Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern, Britt. Yes, it involves both Carol and Hal but Hal is ultimately the action of the book. He's the one that drives the plot forward, not Carol. She's part of it, yes, 100%. She's part of it, but it's Hal advancing the plot. It has to be Diana advancing the plot, not. And the plot can't be she's moping around because Steve got killed, and she's moping around for like years.
Right. Well, you say not to get rid of him. I say yes. But if I had to be a little bit more forgiving, yeah, he can play the role of the father figure, as Perez said. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's, even with Etta, we really don't even talk about Etta that much because even she kind of, I don't know, is really something about Steve and Etta that is very much of the time. They don't fit the modern world for Diana because her motivation, her ambition and everything just overshadows her meeting them being like the main thing. And again, you have to just go over contrivances and do the same traditional, things that's overdone in order to
Exactly.
make them work. And it's just like, no, that's not how you tell a modern story. As I said,
Exactly.
Diana's whole thing is about bringing world peace, bringing peace to her sisters and her mother, seeing the world for herself. And especially of modern times, that is why Diana should be always a modern, character or of modern age. If she was born, if she becomes Wonder Woman at 18, she was born 18 years ago. It's not her being thousands of years old in wartime and all of that. No.
Exactly. And Olivia asks, why haven't they been using Artemis, the Amazon, in Wonder Woman's Tom King comic series? Because I get the feeling that Tom King doesn't know who Artemis is.
That, but also Artemis is caught up, I believe, with Red Hood and
Well, what I do know is that she was in the series on the island in issue 1, I think.
I think she was, but I know that she was the one. Wasn't she the one that killed Hippolyta, even though Hippolyta told her to?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if she's banned or something like that, but
no,
yeah.
she was welcomed back after Hippolyta came back as a goddess. She was welcomed back.
Oh, well, they just don't use her. I mean, they just don't have a storyline for her. She was caught up with Red Hood for a long time, so I'm guessing that's the problem too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I get it, but it's like, but it's like, again, Diana has a fantastic cast of characters, arguably one of the best in DC Comics, but they just don't use it. So I'm like, of course, if you don't use it, that's where people get the idea that Diana doesn't have a good like support system. That's where that comes from, because they don't use it, and too many writers come in there saying, "I'm going to add this character and this character," but it isn't to say, "Okay, use what you have."
Right.
It's like, no, that's why, honestly, if I got assigned Wonder Woman, if I were writing Wonder Woman, I would make the announcement, at least for, let's say, the first arc. I'm just going to use the characters that Wonder Woman has. I'm not creating any new characters. Do you think Cersei will return again to cause more trouble? Do I think Cersei will come back?
Not in King's Run.
No, likely not, because she was defeated and imprisoned by the Spectre, I think, is the way that her story ended. So probably not, I wouldn't say. Plus, again, it's like King is more focused on his OCs than he is actually using Wonder Woman's characters. That's the thing. That's the sad truth about this run. It's more of a, it's it's kind of funny. It's more of, because Trinity's failed, he's just like, okay, I'm just gonna put her in the main book and kill off Diana, so you have to read Trinity. And I go, yeah, bro, it's the most transparent tactic I've ever seen.
Yeah, if we see Diana dead in issue 31, guaranteed. Issue 32 definitely will drop.
Well, I think, okay, so the way this works, okay, yeah, because issue 31 is the start of it, but then issue 32 was the issue that we got the solicits for yesterday. So yeah, I would say watch Trinity screw up and like everyone dies because we cue the SpongeBob meme. Everybody dies. The end. Yeah, like that would be the part where I would be like, okay, that's hilarious. But yeah, I think that is a good place to leave. We had a fantastic episode of nearly 3 hours. Actually, you know what? Let's go for 10 more minutes and make it even 3 hours. What do you say, Britt?
Lordy, Jared.
So, but it's like the thing about it, it's like when you deal with this character. And honestly, here's the thing. That's why again, I'm like, okay, I still have the predict. And Olivia says, thanks. I was curious about Cersei. Anytime. That's why Britt and I do this. But it's like when it comes to like these characters, when it comes to like Wonder Woman, I'm still convinced that 40 is going to end it. 39 is when the Wonder War ends, but 40, it could give them a nice little conclusion issue. That way they can start it on 31, or they could just say he ends at 39 and then just moves on. I doubt he makes it to 50 because the run is horrible. But I feel like I think Mouse Man is probably the thing that killed it. And he's like, okay, just let me end my story so it can be all like, I'll even like, this is again my theory that like he makes it so Trinity is only a him thing. Or what DC ends up doing is giving him a Black Label miniseries that resolves his like Diana Steve Trinity thing. Because that's what they do. They give people petty series when their books become shelf titles. Because here's the funny part. If you look at I'm interested to see the sales of this, Britt, because at least from one person I've seen so far, this issue has been flying off comic book store shelves as opposed to the other one. Yeah, Wonder Woman hopefully will survive to the end of King's comic run. Well, here's the thing. King already showed us that Diana dies at least. And here's the thing. When Britt and I say Diana dies, obviously she's coming back because the next writer has to write her. But again, my point is like, yeah, she's going to die in the future. Trinity's going to go back in time and undo it. My thinking is it ends up undoing everyone, like the entire thing. But anyway, Britt, your thoughts?
I mean, that basically is it. I guess with reading Days of Future Past, if you've read it or whatever, then that pretty much tells us how the story is gonna go. I mean, I really just think it's pointless because no one asked for Trinity, no one likes Trinity. The Wonder Woman book obviously is not selling. King is not into Diana as a character. He's not really he's not contributing anything of value to her history. I think that what he would want to do though is because it's her 85th anniversary year, and her anniversary month is October. So I think he would want to draw all of this out until then. And either he wants to, of course it will be him writing Steve, but make some grand gesture with Steve in that month, or maybe he will leave. But yeah, I honestly think that it's very much a toss-up, but at the same time he did kind of hint around to say that he wanted to write more of something that he actually wants to write that isn't, you know, um, makes him honest, which honestly, I don't think he is being honest with this.
I'm like, if you would rather write Suicide Squad, let's say, go write Suicide Squad.
Right. And he also has, you know, DCU, Mr. Miracle, you know, the animated show. So
isn't it hilarious how James Gunn giving Tom King more work is leading to us? It's like a game off Wonder Woman.
Well, the upside is getting him off her main book. The downside is that he is infiltrating DCU, which
As long as he stays away from the movie Wonder Woman, I'm fine.
That's true.
But Cameron says, should Diana have her own fictional city? Because that's the other reason why some are unfamiliar. As far as much as I hate, she needs her own Arkham or Strikers. You mean she needs her own prison? I mean, she has the island, which has the Doom's Doorway thing, but she could use that, I guess. But it's like she does have Gateway City occasionally.
Right. Honestly, I don't think her having Diana's supposed to be a traveler, you know, so having an established city or whatever is not her thing. Her home is
the world.
You know, Themyscira is the world. Her other home will always be Boston first with Julia and Vanessa. And then Gateway City, but that's really it. She doesn't have that foundation or that tie to a city because with Gotham, that is Bruce Wayne City. That's Batman City. And Gotham is this whole, you know, character in and of itself.
Exactly.
I would say Metropolis is tied more to being old school. Like every time, you know, people talk about Metropolis or how Metropolis is drawn, it definitely gives you that 1970s vibe. And it just feels like it's tied to the Donner films. So that's pretty much that. But even Clark, he is supposed to be a global hero too, you know, and his home should be the fortress or the Kent farm. Metropolis is more of Clark Kent's home and where he would, you know, with the Daily Planet, but even the Daily Planet he really doesn't need. So with Diana being the global hero that she is supposed to be, it's not necessary.
Exactly. And then Olivia also asked, why you're asking such great questions, who do you think's going to write a Wonder Woman next? I'm more partial to Jeremy Adams. I would very much like because he has a Wonder Woman pitch and wants to write the character Britt. That normally goes really well for us when someone wants to write Wonder Woman.
So true.
So it's like, at the very least, that's the reason why. And by the way, hey, what's up, Somar? It just says, are you a fan of Wonder Bat and all the comics? Well, we run a show called Super Wonder Legacy. You tell me. but yeah, it's like, nope. And by the way, let me burst your bubble there. Wonder Bat has no comics. It's not a comics thing. It's based on the cartoon, which in the cartoon, that's also the cartoon that thought it was a good idea to put Bruce Bruce with Barbara. Let's not forget about that. Also, hey, what's up, DC Life? And yes, just not Tom King, which luckily doesn't look like it'll be that. Oh, let me ask you this, Britt. Would you even take Stephanie Williams as the next Wonder Woman writer?
Sure.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, seeing this, it would be nice to see what she does with her own original stuff and watch her completely ignore all the stuff. That would be hilarious. But yeah, it's like even with this one issue, I would say, okay, if this is the way you at least write the Amazons and stuff, I would be like, okay, I can take that. I can take that. But yeah, I think that I think we'll call it a night for this one. This was a great, nice long episode. And next week, what's our next week's episode? Actually, we'll talk about that. Next week we're talking about if we rebooted Superman and Wonder Woman. Oh boy! So Britt, what stories do you have to tease us with?
All right, so I have a couple of one shots. I'm finishing editing one. Well, all throughout this live stream, I have been. So that should be up this sometime this week. Also Odyssey and Shelter sometime this week as well. And but I'm also focusing on my Twitter threads, and I will be posting a Twitter thread tomorrow. It's more of like a mother-daughter homage. I will do a companion with that. Of the first one will be Hippolyta and Diana. The second will be Julia and Diana. With that, I've already posted it on or uploaded it on AO3, but I will post it on Twitter as a thread with pictures, and everything like that to be a little emotional on a Sunday. But yeah, I will start doing little tidbits of kind of teasing the stories on Twitter with little excerpts here and there.
Hell yeah. As for me, tomorrow for Amazon Answers, I'm going to be talking about the original Wonder Woman Black and Gold. And for Wonder Woman Wednesday, I'm going to be talking about the Tomorrowverse animated Wonder Woman, the best one. And for, let's see, what else? I also want to say, I want to announce on this show, I've been doing it on like other stuff, but I want to thank you guys because Athena got funded, the relaunch got funded. And I'm very happy and proud about that. And I can't wait to share this amazing character and world with you guys. And Britt has read it as well, and she's hopping on for issue 2 as the editor. So you're going to be getting comics from me, from Britt and I. So anyone that's been demanding that, you will receive that.
Awesome.
But yeah. And thank you, Britt, for all your help.
Well, thank you for having me.
So stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is Lois Lame, and Steve Trevor is a sack of potatoes. So it's a Maxabat for life. He belongs to the hydraulic press to make a very fine mashed potato paste. Oh, and I hope that the guys of you someday appear on a women's comics. That'll be interesting. And see you guys later. Bye bye.